swear
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Thank you both for appearing today. I'm sorry about the air conditioning. We're hoping it's going to come back on. Oh, it's on now, is it? Oh,
It has slightly started.
Okay. Well, it'll be coming our way soon, I hope. But thank you both for appearing and for appearing in public session. I think it's very important that complainants come in public session so the people of Seychelles know what happened. So you are the complainant, Mrs. Oliaji, and your son Darius he has a lot of knowledge about everything that happened. So he's here to assist the commission.
Because my memory is not so fresh, you must realize. It's many number of years. His is shorter memory, so he remembers more.
Okay, that's great. So we would ask you to set out your complaint, and your son can help you as needed. And just take your time. And if you need to adjourn at any time, just let us know. I think we'll get you a glass. I think Terry's gone to get you a glass so you have some water. But the floor is yours, so thank you.
Okay.
Do you need your papers?
No, not now. May I bore you a little bit with the antecedent instead of the straightforward complaint? Because only then would you understand why I took certain actions or why I behaved in a certain way. Well, I am not a born Seychellois. I came to Seychelles in 1957, having married my husband, Jimmy Oliaji. My husband was a shareholder in TRNUC and Company at that time. TRNUC and Company was a large trading company, even in those times. And it dealt in more than just trading. The other shareholders were all of my community, which is a Parsi community from Bombay. And there were many of them were members of the family. And those who were not members of the family were also treated as one big family. So it was more or less a family company. This is the beginning. My father-in-law had come in 1901 and had worked for Mr. TRNUC. That is why the name is TRNUC, though we are Oliajis, not TRNUCs. He was a highly entrepreneurial person who started as being only a salesperson and then became the owner of the company. And at the same time, he started investing in buying islands from the old French settlers who were very jaded of being in an island like Seychelles, were selling off their properties. And he bought the islands from these French settlers. So we became copra producers because all the islands were copra producing islands. So we became a copra producer. We then started buying copra from other producers. And so we became an exporter also. At that time, the main economy of Seychelles was copra and cinnamon. And we were one of the 3 or 4 copra exporters. Now, the copra exporters formed a board, Copra Export Board, which consisted of the exporters, but on that board, there were also copra producers who were not necessarily exporters themselves. So a board consisted of producers and also exporters. And it had a way they would call for international, shall I say, international tenders for the amount of copra we had to sell. It was done every 3 or 4 months, depending how much copra was there in the warehouse. And accordingly, tenders were called. I'm bringing all this into because the Copra Association also had a fund called Copra stabilization fund. And at the time when, after my husband's death, I was on the Copra board, Mr. Suleiman Adam was the chairman. The Copra Stabilization Fund amounted to anything between 1 million to 2 million rupees. This fund was created for copra producers, so that when the price of copra were to go down below an economic rate, they would be subsidized and they could survive. That was the idea. So the fund was paid for by the levy on copra exporters for the benefit of copra producers. Up till now, I do not know what has happened to that copra stabilization fund. It was held there, maybe in Barclays Bank. I'm not quite certain, because at that time, there was only one bank, which was Barclays. So I presume it was with Barclays. I presume. I'm not swearing it on oath. But I would like to know what has happened to the Copra Stabilization Fund. That's my first one. Now I will come to the more recent history. My husband died in 1968, and I had to take on the mantle of running Timurji's, look after my 3 young children. I was never very efficient about either one of them, but I had to do it. And apart from that, I was also the chairman of a children's society, which was the first NGO ever established in Seychelles. There was no such thing as an NGO at that time. But the Secretary of State for Social Affairs, who at that time was a British person, because we were a British colony, we had not yet become independent, had approached me and said, we must start a children's society. And so I got roped in, and it became a very thriving society which looked after the poor families, the handicapped children, I'm sorry, I must not say handicapped, disadvantaged children. And we had all kinds of, we had a school for the exceptional child. We started the first creche in the country, because at that time there were no creches. And for everything we got help from Save the Children Fund, which is a very international body. They helped us by sending us personnel, which they paid for, we did not. But all the money we raised locally, because we trained the local staff in every field at the same time. So that was Children's Society. That apart. So we come to 1976, when we became independent. I was totally apolitical at that time, nothing to do with politics. I remember going for the independence ceremony in the stadium when the British flag was brought down. I'm sure Michael will remember. And the Seychelles flag went up. As somehow a new Indian come to Seychelles, I was surprised. The people of Seychelles, even at that time, were not too enthusiastic. They did not cheer, they did not really become very effusive. I had seen Indian independence and how different it was when India became independent, before Seychelles became independent. I don't know why the Seychelles were not too enthusiastic. So after independence, life just went on, all the bickerings. Now, my husband died in 1968. So I had lots of legal problems. I had to divide his estate and all that. So Mr. Albert Rene was my legal representative. He represented my children on different meetings because I represented myself. All my children were minors. So I had to have a representative. I could not be myself and their representative. So Albert Rene was a legal advisor for me, and he was also a friend. His wife, Jeva Rene, at that time was the head teacher of Seychelles training college, for teachers training college. And she was a great friend because I was the chairman and she was the patron of Children's Society. So we would meet for tea, discuss the matters of Children's Society between us. So the Rene family was very much a friend's family. Mr. Mancom's was Richard Mancom and Company were the competitors in trade with Timurjis. But there was no ill feeling. We were great friends. The Mancom household, every time there was a party, because that was the era when everybody gave cocktail parties. So you met all the people, you met officials, you met ordinary people, you met business people. Of course, you had to stand all the time. That was one sad thing about cocktail parties. So we were friends with the Mancoms on everyday term. So you can see there was no alignment to Jimmy Mancom, no alignment to Mr. Albert Rene. Totally independent, both were friends. Life continued. There was the coup. Within 167, in 1 year, there was the coup. Now, on 4th of June, the day before, the night before the coup, there was a delegation of Air India person who had come, who was an area manager, who also happened to be a Parsi, who I did not know, but because we are Parsis, we entertain each other. And the manager was very close. The manager who was here in Seychelles, Air India manager, he was a very close friend. So they were to be entertained. I got an invitation from this prime minister, because Albert Rene was the prime minister, he was not the president, to come for dinner on 4th of June. Of course, I said yes, and I went. I was surprised whether I had made a mistake on time or whether I was called at the right time. I'm not quite sure even now. But I was a bit early, what I felt was early. And I was greeted by Mr. Rene. So I asked him, but where is Jeva? Oh, he said, Jeva has gone to Paris with Mrs. Ferrari. There was Dr. Ferrari with Mr. Rene. Then comes Jacques Houdou. Jacques Houdou was my neighbor's son. He, to me, has always been my neighbor's son. He's never been a minister or anything particular. So, Jacques, where is Marouk, who's my niece? Oh, she's gone to Silhouette. I found it very strange that all the wives were absent, and there I was with those three people, and I was early. They, after that, had a massive discussion between themselves. One was a minister of education, another one was a minister of housing, and they were complaining bitterly of how badly everything was being managed. I was surprised. In my usual style, I said, I cannot understand. You are the ministers, why are you complaining? You are the government. Why can you not ameliorate what you are complaining about? So I was thumping the table in my usual style. And they went on talking, and after that, the main guests came, and the discussion stopped. Okay, the dinner was over, I went home. But it left me that it was very surprising that all the three wives of the three people there were not there in the country. Next day was the 5th of June. I was invited. This time there was a cocktail party given by Air India at Bovalo Bay Hotel. I was invited, but that very day I was also invited for a dinner at Mr. Mansour's house, Mr. Mansour Rahimtullah, who was a close friend of mine. And he said he was having Mr. Guy Morel, who was a finance minister, I think, or finance in the bank. He was the bank, top man of the bank, governor of the bank. I'm not quite sure, once again, I'm not sure what his position was. Yet he was to go to Mr. Mansour's house for dinner, so they had invited me for dinner. I said, okay, I'll leave the cocktail party early, and I'll come to your house for dinner. So I went to the cocktail, and I left the party earlier than what was supposed to be. And as I was stepping out, Mr. Albert Rene was stepping out. So he said, Soona, why are you leaving early? I said, I'm going for dinner at Mansour's house. So I said, but Albert, why are you leaving early? So he said, I have a very urgent work to do tonight. Now, I was not going to question him, what is his urgent work? So, and we left. I went to dinner at Mansour's house, must have come home at about 11:30. I'm not sure what time, but it was well past, at least definitely past 11. And I was changing into my night clothes. I suddenly hear gunshots.
Tell them where you lived.
Yeah.
Tell them where you lived. Where you were living.
I, by the way, my son says I must tell where I was living. I was living at Montfleury in the house dead opposite the hospital. So it was close to the police station, very close to the convent, very close to the Seychelles College, close to the hospital. So it was very centrally located for me to know, at least hear the gunshots. When I heard the gunshots, it was so surprising. We had never heard guns in Seychelles. So I thought perhaps this might be firecrackers. But of course, I knew firecrackers. They did not sound like firecrackers. So I'm a very, shall I say, curious person. I put on my dress, got down, got into my car, and I said, I'll go and see what is happening.
You made a few phone calls first.
No?
No? Okay.
I went to the police station. At the police station, there is the wall, the Montfleury police station. There is a small wall. And there were all this, about, I think, half a dozen or more policemen sitting on the wall, some in their shorts, very casually dressed, talking away. So I got out from the car and I asked them, but I heard gunshots. Did you not hear it? Oh, yes, madam. A white Vauxhall van, a car, not a van, a white Vauxhall car came with 6 men in it, with guns in their hand, and they have gone to our armory up there on the top. I did not know where the armory was. I was glad I did not know, otherwise I would have gone up to the armory. But so I said, but if you see gunmen going up to the armory and you are sitting down here talking, why did you not inform the central police station? Oh, but the telephone is not working. I said, okay, get into my car and I'll take you to the central police station. That got them, no, madam, you just go home, go to bed, don't worry about it. Everything is all right. They were so nonchalant. Of course, I was not. So I turned my car from Montfleury. I go down to go to the central police station. On the way, I passed Mulji's. The shutters were down. At that time, we had shutters on the windows. And our guardian was nicely snoring away. So nothing was disturbed. The road was totally clear. I go to the central police station, and I'm just about to step out. I had a green standard car, a small car. I opened and put half my leg out when I saw a huge man in camouflage uniform, you know, those army camouflage uniform. And he pointed the gun straight at me. I was so flabbergasted. I said, We had never seen the camouflage uniform in Seychelles. We had never seen any army uniforms. The only uniform we had seen were police uniforms. But this was definitely, and the man was tall and very dark. And he was pointing the gun straight at me. Then I saw behind the pillar, by the side of the pillar, I could not see, a hand come down and put the gun down. Somebody's hand came and just put the gun down. That got my senses up. I said, okay, I'm not invited guest here. So I got back into my car, turned the car around. This time I went past the outside road, not the Temujis road, went past the outside road. And I see some custom officer in a custom officer's uniform singing away, walking with his girlfriend. Then I saw another person whistling away. I began to doubt my own senses. I said, am I hallucinating? Did I see all this? Or it is something, why is it nobody is concerned and only I am concerned? Well, I reached home and I was so confused. I said, I've got to phone and find out what is happening. So when I switched on my lights to start phoning people, my next door neighbor was Hodul's, which was Mr. Jacques Hodul's mother, his sisters and all that. His sister, who was Marianne Hodul, she came across the fence. We had no fence. We were neighbors. We walked in and out of each other's yard. So she came. Soona, what is happening? I see you going out and in and you, what is the matter? I said, Marianne, did you hear any noise? She said, no, not really. But I told her, I said, I heard gun, and this is what the police told me about going to the armory and all that. I said, let's phone and find out what is happening. So who would I phone? At that time, I knew the police commissioner. He was one Mr. Marabel. I might be wrong, but that is the name that sticks in my head. And I had his number. It was because all the children were friends. I was friends with everybody. I phoned his number, and his phone was dead. There was not, somebody did not pick it up. It was dead. There was no. So then I looked up in the telephone book, Mr. Stone, who was the security officer at that time. I looked his number and I phoned him. Once again, his phone was dead. Now, that rather surprised me. So I tried, I did not know, Jimmy was not there, none of his ministers were there, all the people had gone to England for, was it the Commonwealth Conference or the Queen's, whatever it was that Jimmy went at the time of the coup. So I could not phone any one of them because the people that I knew in Jimmy's ministry, I tried to phone Mr. Prakasan. His telephone rang, because Prakasan was a minister at that time. His telephone rang, but he did not pick up the phone. So in the end, I phoned Albert Rene, because I had his number. I phoned him. He did not pick up the phone, but his phone rang. So I said, this is strange. Some phones are cut, some phones are ringing. So I phoned Cable and Wireless. And I said to the person, young man, do you know quite a few lines have been cut off? And did you hear any gunshots? He said, Madam, I am in an air-conditioned cabin. I can't hear anything that happens outside. And I don't know if the lines have been cut, but I'll find out. I said, anyway, just go out of your cabin and you might hear something more than I can hear. That's what. But I put down, he said, I will check. I don't know the lines have been cut. So I was a little bit agitated that why the lines were cut. And I had seen a man, I thought it was a foreign invasion. And here was the whole country staying asleep. Not even the telephone, cable and wireless knew anything about it. I was really getting agitated. So I phoned the airport. Now, don't ask me why I phoned the airport, but I did. And the girl answered the phone. I don't know why the airport was open or what. This I don't remember, but I did phone the airport. And the girl said, I said, is there anything happening at the airport? She said, no, madam, nothing. Everything is quiet. And then just as she said this, she said, wait. There is a jeep coming with some army people in it, army uniformed people. And she put the phone down. She was agitated, she put the phone down. That was all I knew. So the last person I phoned I phoned Albertone, I phoned Dr. Ferrari. And Dr. Ferrari picked up the phone. And I told him, I said, Dr. Ferrari, strange things are happening in this country. I see a man in an army uniform and all that. He said, oh, Mrs. Oliaji, please don't worry. Everything is all right. Just go to bed. Don't worry yourself. So I told Marianne, he says, go to bed. So let's go to bed. By this time, it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. And so Marianne went home. I really went to bed. And 6 o'clock in the morning, Mansu phones me. Soona, have you put the radio on? I said, no, Mansu, I'm fast asleep. There is martial music on the radio, and they go on saying something about a curfew, that we must not go out. There is a curfew from today. Do you know anything about it? I said, well, I have almost knew, but I don't know what I know. No, he said it's a coup. That was the first time I heard the word coup. It was Mansoor who knew about it and told me that this is a coup. I said, Mansoor, I'm too sleepy. I'm going back to sleep. So I went back to sleep. Well, there was a curfew. Do you know, through all this, the next day, I did not know or hear about anything about the shooting of Mr. Bishop Changim's brother. There was no news. The news on the radio always was martial music, please stay calm, nothing is happening, we are safe, that kind of thing, you know. I'm sure one of you must have heard what happened, what was being said. No? Oh, you wasn't here. What about you? Huh?
I was only 7, I wouldn't know.
Oh, you wouldn't know. That's it. Michael, do you remember anything?
I was in Nairobi.
There you are. So I'm talking to a panel of ignorance. So, but there was not a word about what was happening in the land. But in the evening comes Mr. Albert Rene and says, oh, I did not know anything about the coup. I was not involved, but I have been asked by the committee. I don't know, or something to that effect. Huh? I'm not using his exact words. To take over the charge. That got me irritated because I knew by that time that of course he knew about it. Otherwise, why would he say I'm leaving early on the day of the coup from a party because I've got some urgent work? There was nothing I can do. So I stayed. Now my daughter tells me now, well, she said that in the evening, about 4 o'clock, while I was upstairs, in the room upstairs, Mr. Chiclod, who was supposed to be by that time army commander or something like that. Huh?
Claude Vidot.
But I always knew him as
Yes,
Chiclod. He's Claude Vidot. His daughter and Beros, my daughter, were close friends. Every day they would meet at home, as girls would meet. So Chiclod knew because he would come to pick up his daughter. So Chiclod knew my house very well. Everybody knew her father very well. And he called Beros out. And he said, Beros, tell your mother everything is in the hands of our friends. But she must be careful because there are soldiers or there are people who don't know her and they might shoot her just because she ventures out. So tell your mother not to go out and just to obey whatever is said. Beros comes and gives me the message. He came specially to give the message that I must take care, which was very kind of him. And she said, but he had a big gun, and she described to me the gun he had. He had showed her the gun. I said, well, it sounds like a machine gun, but what am I going to do? They had a machine gun, whatever. I'm just saying that they warned that I should not go out. So we did not go out. Then 3 days or 2 days later, they come again to my house and say, please open Timurji's. We want some provisions from you. I said, I can't go out. There is a coup, there is a curfew. He said, no, we will give you an army escort. You will come with the army, open Timurji's. So I had to open the shop. They took provisions from us. It was mainly all big-sized tins of different things that we had, more the catering-sized things, because the army had run out of provisions, so they were collecting provision from all the merchants. They made me write an invoice, and sure enough, after a few days it was paid. It was not that it was not paid. So they were honest enough to pay them what they took. Well, then they asked that everybody should give up their guns or whatever they had, any arms. Now, I had a big gun, which was my husband's, which I did not know how to use. And I had a pistol, a small pistol of his. Now, when Jimmy had died, the police knew that I had a pistol, so they asked me that come with the pistol, we'll show you how to use it, you need it as your defense, because I was a lone woman with 3 children in a very accessible house. So they said, I had gone to the police station, they had shown me how to do target practice, how to clean it, and all that. They were very good at that time. So I said, I could hide the pistol, but they know about it, so I better not hide it. So I had to go with the gun and the pistol and surrender it to the police. And that was the coup. So but we accepted it. The whole country accepted it, because what else could it do? They had a Tanzanian army with strange human beings, according to us, and strange uniforms, camouflage uniforms, and they ran about in their jeeps at full speed on the road. In those days, they were the masters. Life went on after the coup. In the beginning, there was no waves, nothing. They just let the matter run its course. So we all became resigned to it. Okay, it's a change. One president, one prime minister, they've changed. So nothing. That year, I was a sort of all the islands, Alphonse Island was still with us. The rest of the islands, Temujis had sold before. Alphonse Group. And I was Alphonse and a property on Ladik, Oskoko. Those two were still with Temujis. So I was a sort of a general supervisor of the thing. The islands were being run by one Mr. Ade Karkaria. But I was on top of him. Ade says he was told that the president and his family are going to Alphonse for a visit. So I said, well, if the president is going, one of us must go. So I decided that Darius was with me. I don't know how old you were, about 11.
Was it 77?
Yeah. What about
13.
Huh?
13.
13. He was 13. I said, okay. I and my son would fly there to play a host. I used to go to the islands myself.
Couldn't fly there.
Yeah? No, we couldn't fly there. So I was
We flew
used
to
to
Dar-
going.
We
went
flew
to
to
Daros.
Daros first.
So
yes.
what I said is, we had sold Daros to the Shah's nephew. So I knew the man who had done the deal. So I said, I'll arrange with him that we fly to Daros, and our schooner, which would go to Alphonse, will pick me up from Daros and take me to Alphonse. So it was, because going to Alphonse was 36 hours journey on the schooner. This would cut it down to 12 hours. So I said, okay, we'll fly. So the two of us flew to Daros. And as luck would have it, he fell sick. I don't know why. He got fever or headache or I don't know what happened. And I was there with a child who was sick. So the manager or their administrator, I said, look, I can't take him to Alphonse while he's sick. Can you, because they had a daily flight between Daros and Maya, can you fly him out back to Maya while I will go to Alphonse? So I proceeded to Alphonse. He came back to Maya. And we had the resident family with us, with me. And the manager was there. And that was my first insight into how Mr. Rene works. Because you are living for 3-4 days with a person and his family. He would sit, he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he said, I need a coffee at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, you need a coffee? Here is Nescafe, here is powdered milk, and here is a thermos of hot water. Please make your coffee at 4 o'clock in the morning. Because who was going to get up to make his coffee at 4 o'clock in the morning? So he himself said, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time we get up, he's sitting on the chair, easy chair on the veranda, smoking his cheroot and gazing out and thinking and planning. And I used to wonder what that man is planning and plotting so much. Mr. Guy Morel was there. He would sit and think, and then he would have a little conversation with Mr. Guy Morel. I was busy with the manager. I was going to the Gallery Fair, going to seeing where the work was going on, trying to explain to the manager, let's make cup copra, because that was something new at that time. So I was busy doing my thing. Mr. Rene never went anywhere near where the work was being carried out. He walked on the island. He did not, his sons were fishing off the jetty. They would shoot at wild goats we had. They would try to shoot wild goats. That is Glennie and David. But he did not go. He just sat, talked, sat thinking, talked to his wife, talked to Guy Morel, that's all. That's all. I did not know that he was sitting and plotting against me. And then they said, and Alphonse was a beautiful island. It was well kept. We did not have shacks. We had started building block houses for the laborers with the tank running down from the roof so they could get water, not drinking water, but cleaning water. We must have built already 5 or 6 of those cottages. And I was planning with the manager when we would send more blocks for him to continue building more this. It was an island which was well kept. There was no undergrowth. It's a beautiful lagoon with a small island in the distance called Bijoutier. And the all the coconut trees are planted in a lovely rows. And the whole island was protected as the wind is by cedar trees, so that the wind does not come to the island in force. I don't know how they said that we neglected the island, and so they took it over from us. That I cannot say. But that is how it was in 1977 when I last saw it. That was Alphonse.
So they compulsorily acquired it in 1977?
No.
No.
No, it was not acquired in 1977. It was never mentioned also it was going to be acquired or anything. But I did hear all the time Mr. Rene talking about other traders to Mr. Morel, to Guy Morel. I don't know. He would be talking about Kim Koon, talking about Musa and all that. I was not part of the conversation. I kept away from it. But something was eating him. That I could see. Something was bothering. He was planning something. So that was 1977. In 78, that is the time, 78 or 79 was there?
79.
79. 78, I think the first thing that they did was they stopped private practice of the doctors, and they stopped having private rooms for the hospitals. So that was the first indication that the socialism or communism, call what you like, but I call it communism, was the first one. Of course, it was said, we are all equal. Why should there be private rooms just because there are some people who can pay for them? I don't know whether there was a meeting or what it was. I've forgot. All I remember is that I got up and I said, but Mr. Rene, why do you think we all work all our lives? So that when we are old, we could at least be sick and die in privacy. We don't want to be sick, to vomit and fart in front of everybody. This is why we work all our lives. And of course, as usual, he ignores anything that is said. His idea was perfect. Everybody is equal. That was the first indication. Of course, the doctors, I don't know. I only knew two doctors. One was Dr. Jiwan, who was not affected. He packed his bags and he left. And Dr. Amoy, he did not go immediately. He stayed some while before he left. I don't know why, how, and what exactly what is. But I know Dr. Jiwan just packed his bags and he left. So, because once you are a doctor, you don't have to worry that you got to earn a living anywhere else. You make a living anywhere. So that was the first indication. And then in 79, early 79, my second daughter finished school. And she had to go for further studies overseas. And she said, I am not going to England. It's cold, it's miserable there. I want to go to somewhere where it is nice and warm. I said, well, would you like to go to India? She said, no, I don't want to go to India. They are Indians, but they had not been to India very often for them to like it. So I said, okay, I'll investigate if I can find you a school in America, in the United States. So I went on a long holiday to the United States, early part of 1979. After 2 months or so, I came back, and my son informed me that there is going to be a camp where all the boys would go when they, instead of going to the Seychelles college, they would have to go to study in the camp. He was not disturbed. He was quite happy. Now you carry on the rest.
It started, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was a Tuesday in the middle of October. We were called to go to, at the Seychelles College, there was a room called the amphitheater, which was like a lecture room, which was special separately, which was big enough to hold more than 100 children. And all the third Form 3 students were told to go to the amphitheater at I don't remember what time it was. And we were there waiting, and Mr. Rene came. And he outlined his plans for NYS. He told us, this is what's going to happen. You'll have a camp. You'll be taught how to grow things, how to farm, how to fish, and as well you will learn. And honestly, he put it in words that made it sound as though it was going to be something fun. So we listened, and he said, and then tell your parents that tomorrow there's going to be a meeting at the hall to come to the hall where he will explain to the parents. So I went home that evening. Now, where we lived was like 2 minutes walk from Seychelles College. So my house was a meeting place for all my friends, my sister's friends, like from the point after school till the last bus. You know, the people who lived furthest away went first, and the people who lived the closest went last. And we would be there till 6 o'clock, playing and doing stuff and talking. So all my friends...
House was a youth club.
All my friends came with me, came home and with my group of friends, and my mom had just come back, and so she wasn't working. She was at home. So we explained to her what was said, and we said there's a meeting tomorrow, and she, at this point, she knew what happened in Cuba and those places where these things happened, and she said, no, this is not a fun play camp. This is a youth service. This is military service you're going to be doing. You're going to be being brainwashed. And so we learned what was happening. So, okay. Then the next day came, and the meeting was there. And as I said, we lived there. So we went, and we stood outside the hall, which is not soundproof. It was louvers. So we could see what was going on inside. We could hear what was going on inside. And he was having his meeting. And he explained to the parents in exactly the same way he explained it to us. To start with, it was going to be this fantastic place. And then at certain points, he started asking for parents to what do you have to say? Do you have any questions? And not only my mom, but quite a few parents stood up and said, well, have you asked us whether we want to send our children to this place? I mean, and he said, no, this is a fun. He says, no, but Seychelles is a place where we've grown up. Parents look after their kids. Parents élèvent aux enfants. They raise them. They teach them other stuff the school doesn't teach them. They're not going to learn these things in this place where there are no parents.
Well,
The stories that I've heard on this, where they said, oh, he's not going to have priests allowed in there, I don't remember that. But anyway, after the meeting got heated. My mother stood up and says, have you asked us all here, how many of us are willing to send our kids? Show us a show of hands. And
well,
not many parents.
He avoided the subject when I said, have you asked the parents? You are a president, but we are the parents. Have you asked us whether we want to send the children away from home? What happens to their academic studies? So he just avoided the subject. Once again, all the mothers were, especially the girls' mothers of girls, they were very concerned. How would we know that our children would be well looked after, our girls would not be this if it is a mixed camp? I did not have to worry about that. But I was worried. He just avoided the subject. Then I would get up again and I said, but Mr. President, all we are asking is that here you have got 200 parents sitting here. Why don't you ask just these 200 parents what they think about it? He was so furious. He said, how do you expect me to take a vote? I said, no, sir. You don't have to take a ballot paper or anything. Just ask us the show of hands, how many we agree, and you will see. Well, he could not get out of it, so he had to say, okay. He thought most parents would agree because he thought, people would be ready to get rid of their children. They would be given uniforms, they would be fed, there would be a doctor, they would look after them, there would be animators, there would be group leaders, blah, blah, blah. So they would be well secured, well looked after. So he said, okay, how many parents? Do you know 4 parents put their hands up? When he saw those just 4, he did not say a word. He just got so red in the face. I actually could see him going red in the face. He got out of his chair and he stomped out. He never said a word. He just walked out of the meeting with all his people who were with him, who had come with him. Oh, there was a big hue and cry in the hall.
So when that happened, my friends who were with me, a small bunch who were already, we were not the only ones looking in. But we went home. And then we started talking amongst ourselves, what are we going to do? And then my mom arrived and I said, look, Mom, we're planning that tomorrow, day after, when we go to school, we're going to do a sit-in in the class. We're not going to work. We're going to put some boards off. We don't want to go to NYS and whatever. So I asked her, can you organize somebody from Temulji to bring, bits of cardboard boxes and marker pens, and we can write on them. So I don't know how it got back here to me, how it arrived. Maybe she phoned, and there were some older kids there who had, I think, a car. They went, I think, to get it.
And
they came back.
We had those lovely big cartons of Benson and Hedges cigarettes.
So we started.
Perfect for that.
My mom was not involved in what we wrote on the boxes or anything like that. She just gave us, and there you are, do what you have to do. Her thought was that we were going to go into the classroom as what was called Form 3 in those days. Not F3 or third form or anything like that. It was called Form 3. And we were going to go and sit in the class, and we were going to refuse to work.
And just put up the boards.
Now, I was 15. We were all around this age of 14, 15 years old. I don't know why, I didn't take the things to school the next day. I left them at home. I don't know if I chickened out or what. And we got to class, and I was looking around at my friends, are we going to not work or whatever? Then we heard a commotion outside in the playing field. And there was so the teacher was trying to tell us, no, don't go, sit down, time to start classes. Of course not, we went to see what was going on outside. And in the field were a group of 5th and 6th form students. They were never going to be affected by NYS, but they're the ones who decided they were the ones who were going to fight for us. So they stood in the field and started shouting, we don't want NYS, we don't want NYS. And the convent was across the road, and there was modern school across the road, but a little bit that way. Of course, they all saw what was happening. The nuns tried to keep the gates closed. The girls came out. They joined us in the field. We started walking around the Seychelles College field, going in a circle. Then somebody in the crowd had a bright idea. Let's go to the Ministry of Education and protest over there. And the Minister of Education at the time was at La Bastille here. So at that point, when we started going in the road, I said, oh, the signs are at home. So I ran ahead to go and get the signs. And of course, who do I see by the side of the road giving out the signs to all the boys? It's my mother, because she hadn't gone to work at that time. It was still before 8 o'clock. So I said, what are you doing? He said, but you had left the signs here, I'm giving them out to use. So we went to town, we went through all the streets, we went past all the schools that existed in town. There were, what? St. Clair, Belloni School, the other one further nearer the cathedral there, I forget what it was called. Saint Jean Bosco, no? Saint Jean Bosco. And then there was, I think, another one closer to, yeah. And all those children joined us and whatever, and we went through English River and the main road. At that time, both roads were open. And we went to La Bastille, and of course, they had closed all the windows and the doors, and we just stood there shouting, and where's the minister? We want to talk to the minister. Because up to that point, we were still talking to education. And of course, the minister didn't come out. But somebody else, I don't know who, I can't remember, says, let's go to State House. So we went to State House, and I was towards the front, not at the back, but towards the front of the line of people, and we decided we were going to take the English River Road rather than 5th June to go to State House. And who do I see there with an Indian man and a pickup? It's my mother. She's giving out lemonade. And this is, I'm going to solemnly swear, I took one lemonade. And definitely there was no vodka or whiskey or anything in that lemonade. Okay, which is what the story was that my mother gave the children lemonade laced with alcohol.
No, okay. I saw the children walking. And I thought to myself, okay, the college boys would have some money in their pocket. So they would buy at least water or something to drink. But that's children of modern school and all those other government schools, they don't have it. And it was so hot, they were perspiring. So I just took my car, I went to English River, went to that Indian shop. I said, how many cases of lemonade you got? He said, I've got quite a few. I said, put them in your pickup and give it to the children. Come tomorrow in Temulji, and I will pay you for it, because I did not have the money to pay. And that is where he saw me dishing out lemonade.
Okay. Then we carried on. We went to State House. Surprise, surprise, the gates were open. And we got inside, and I don't know how. There was a podium there with a microphone and everything. And Mr. Rene was there. And he came and he asked, tell us what you want. And a few of the older boys, I think one of them was Regis Franco. He came and he spoke at the podium, and he said, Mr. President, we don't want to go to NYS. The children don't want to go into NYS. I think you should scrap this idea. And he said, okay, we will listen to your demands, go home, and tomorrow or day after we will. Honestly, we went home. Nothing happened that day. If there was any damage, I have no idea.
There was none.
No, the first day. But of course, it was fun. It was really fun. So we went out the next day again. But the next day, by the time we reached State House, this time the gates were properly shut. And I think there were chains on it. I saw it, and it started to get. I personally thought there's something is wrong now. So I left. I went into Temulji's. I went onto the balcony and watched as they went. Then there were adults in there, lots of adults.
The
making
parents
noise.
joined the
No,
studio
no, no,
system.
no, 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 no. I don't know if it was only parents, but there were adults. And they went, then I went home, and then we were listening to radio. It was something like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something, and Gisino came on the radio, and he said, "Go home. We are not going to have NYS. There will be no NYS. You please go home. Stay calm, blah, blah, blah." So, of course, that was the day they went and broke into the store at Cebu, and they stole Guinness. That was a day also. I remember two of my friends coming back with 2 or 3 Guinness, and I had the first time I ever tasted Guinness, and I don't know how people drink that thing. It's the most horrible drink in the world. And then things started to happen in town. We heard there was rioting. They had set fire to a police car. There was a fire, I think, at Tobruk Club or something like that. And then the friends who had cars, those older friends who had cars, also heard that they had broken a window at Temulji. My mom had come home by then because she had shut the shop down. And she came, she said, "I've got to go and sort this out, the broken a window." So this one friend who had the car took her. Later on, we were standing by the road. We saw this car go by full speed down south towards Montfleury. And then 2 minutes later, what they call the Vascar in those days, the little blue Mini, which was a police car, which was there to catch people speeding. And it was chasing them. This happened. Then my mom, I don't know how she got home later. She says, don't worry, they only broke one window of Dudu's shop.
We had to just put the
Which
plywood
we
on
put
it.
plywood, and then we stayed calm and we stayed at home. I think it was the weekend. Was it the weekend? Saturday? I'm not sure. The second day of the thing.
I have no clue.
And
of
then we
any
stayed
times.
home. Then there was a message on the radio, because at that point the radio was on permanently. I don't know when that message came, whether it was the next day or what. It was Mr. Rene himself who came on the radio, and he said, "There's going to be no school, and there was going to be a counter demonstration to show support of his system. So there's going to be no school, stay at home." So I think it was a Monday, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a Monday. There was going to be a demonstration. So my mom, because this was still in the morning, had not gone to work. She was still at home, and we stayed at home, and we watched from our balcony, from our veranda upstairs. We could see the main road, and they walked past, going towards Montfleury Plaisance. And they went, and they were shouting, and they faced in at our house and shouted things down at us. I can't remember what was said. Then, a while later, they came back the other way. And at that point, a few of them broke out from the road and came down our lane and broke into our house. And
So I'll take up the story.
no, wait, I'll just say one more
What
minute to
happened
what
to
I
you?
remember. These people came into the house. Everybody, I didn't know a single person in the street. I was only 15. But 2 of them, they were blanc, white men, in a sea of dark men. And one barged his way forward, pushed me aside, and I tried to stop. My mom pushed me to the back, said, don't get involved. And he said, "Mrs. Oliaji, we are making a citizen's arrest." And they took her, they tied her hands, like this, in the front or at the back?
At the back.
At the back. And they went away with her. And what happened to her after that, she will tell you. But I was in a panic. I started phoning everybody I knew, every of my mother's friends or whatever, and told them this is what had happened. Now, people had already started being locked up. People like Paul Vez and all that, a few months before or a year before. So for me, this is what was going to happen to her. She was going to be put away in jail where nobody could see her. Not even the family could go and see her. That was the system that was. We knew that because we knew of him. His wife was not able to see him, nothing. And then later on, he was told he had to leave the country. So I thought this was what was going to happen. I was in a total panic and whatever, and I phoned, and then I just waited. I went to my Mrs. Odul's house next door, and I waited and I waited. Then the phone rang. This was, I don't know how much later. The phone rang. She was on the phone. She says, there's a police car coming for you. They will take you to Bovalo. Go to Bovalo. Go to the beach near Coral Strand. We had a little house, a property at Bovalo which had a little house on it, which we used to go to every Sunday. And during the holidays, you would spend a week or so over there. So I was taken there, and then much later on, she came in another police car, and now she can take on the story, carry on. But my point is I'm trying to make is that at no point did she organize this march. This was a spontaneous thing organized by
The
children.
students themselves.
But children, because 17, you are still a child.
So this was, of course, I angered the president by saying, have a show of hands. That is what, and I could see he was so angry with me. Then they organized a counter march, and I was warned in the morning that just stay in the house, don't go anywhere. There is a march. So I phoned everybody in the shop, close the shop, don't open the shop, don't come to work if need be. I tried to phone as many people as I could. And I was sitting at home. Normally, in those days, I always wore a sari. So normal human beings always saw me in a sari. I was not used to wearing a dress at that. Means I would not go out in a dress. I was in a dress at home. All these hordes of people suddenly came up. There was nothing I could do to stop because my house had doors downstairs, and then there was the steps coming up. The doors downstairs were open, and my maid was with me. She was frightened. Sora was. Darius also. I forget my son's name. Because I got his grandson, so I mixed them up. So we were. Well, I cannot say that I was calm. I was agitated, but what can you do? There was nothing one can do. And then the whole horde of people came up. I think about 100 people. I don't know. I can't imagine. And I saw some of them looking under the bed. I could not understand what are they looking under the bed. And they asked my maid, where is your madam? And I'm standing next to her. But they did not recognize me because I was in a dress and they were used to seeing me in a sari. So then those two white people came. One I knew to be Mr. Cressley Setash. I don't remember who the other person was. And he was the one who came forward and said, this is a citizen's arrest. Well, there was nothing you can do in front of all the men, a crowd, a mob. So he said, he tied my hands up at the back. Well, I just wanted to get out of the house because I wanted to protect my son. I didn't want the people to get out of the house as soon as possible. So I just walked with them.
Can I say something? There was one man, I don't know him, I still won't know him till today, who he was, what his name is. He took me aside, he told me, Garçon, pataka se mo buwe yung mama. Papulis na yari vekli. Now she remembers what he did.
Yes, he was the one. Then when we reached that main road, the lane I walked, I said, now you untie my hands. If you keep my hands tied. I won't walk. You will drag me to the streets. So untie my hands, because I won't walk otherwise. So they had to untie my hands. And that is when that dark man, I always think of him as a boxer. I don't know him also. He was so huge and so dark, and a huge hand. He took my right hand, and that Mr. Sertaj had held my left hand. They held my two hands, and they marched me through the crowd. And the crowd was full of men and women with, I don't know what they were. I remember seeing something like "Death to Soona." It was written on one of the boards. I honestly cannot swear to it, but I have the vision of it. Because when you are in a crowd and you are being held and frog-marched, more or less, through the crowd, then as we approached the Murjis, all the people were standing all over on the roadside, on the curbs, because this was something that I don't think the population knew what was going to happen. The party knew what they were going to do, because it was organized by the party. They had met, they had gone to, picked up the boards, and then they had come. On the way, they arrested some more people. I'm not saying, but I did not know about it, because I was so covered in people. There was women who would shout at me, hit me on the head. Huh?
Yeah,
What?
tell them that they hit you with the...
Yes, they hit me with their placards, It did not bother me. Somehow I had the courage. I said, okay, so what? This is what it is. It is. I will see what happens. Then they took me in the front of the car when we reached the clock tower. That's when I thought, I got a little bit, I said, are they going to tie me to the clock tower and lynch me? Or are they going to take me to the president's house? Then I would say that was the first time I was really worried. But that dark man went on telling me, he held my head so tight that I still have a pain in this. I promise you that. You can see how this hand is distorted. He told me, Madam Patakase. And I thought to myself, this man said Patakase, and here it is, I'm being mobbed. And he's telling me, don't worry. That was my slight moment of panic. And then, just as I reached the front of the clock tower, I saw the police car, what was it called? The little blue Mini, come. And it was Mr. James Pillay, who was the police commissioner. I knew Mr. Pillay. When he saw me and he stopped his car, he came out of the car and told them, put her in my car. He told them in Creole. I don't speak good Creole, so I won't say it in Creole. So he said, at first they hesitated, but he was very firm. He said, I told you, put her in my car. So they released me, and I sat down in the car with him in the front seat. He took the turn I thought he was going to take me to the president's house, because it's up that president's house. But he just took the turn around the clock tower and took me to the police station. Now, I did not know whether I was going to be locked up or what, but he was very kind. He said, no, let's go up into my office. So he took me to his office. And there he told his secretary, who was that lady?
I think it was Mrs. Boyson, I presume.
Yes, Mrs. Bresson, I think. Was very kind. He said, give her a cup of coffee, wash her, clean her, because I could not see myself, what state I was in. But I felt the blood all over me, on my face and my head and all that. She took me, she cleaned me up, because I did not see. But she cleaned me up, made me wash my face, gave me a cup of coffee, and even gave me 2 biscuits to eat. So that restored me totally, because I realized that I was not going to be locked up. Then I went and sat in Mr. Pillai's office. And he said, he did not tell me anything. He said, you are just plain lucky. You are lucky. So that much he said. And then we chatted. Then I heard some scream, a loud scream. I said, James, what is happening? Who's this screaming? He said, oh, it's all right. There's somebody being locked up downstairs and she's screaming. So they had locked up Mrs. Adli. I don't know why she was taken. I have no idea. How long she was locked up, I don't know anything. All I know is that she screamed so loudly. And then I just waited. But I was in Mr. Pillai's office. He carried on doing his stuff. Then the telephone rang. Now he had two telephones. One telephone was on his table and the other telephone was on the side. When that telephone rang, he said, Soona, please go out. This is a private call. So I got up and I said, James, I called him by his first name. I said, James, I think this call is from the President's house. Tell Mr. President that even if he hangs me, I am not going to apologize. I'm not going to say sorry. So you better tell him that if he does not want, you can hang me if he wants. And I told him, I said, I'm an Indian. I know how to protest. So if you lock me up, I will protest, and I will teach others how to protest also. Because I'm an Indian. We grew up protesting in India. Mahatma Gandhi taught us how to protest. Yes. And James said, Soona, calm down, go out. And I went out of his office. I don't know whose call it was, but I was very angry by them. I stopped being frightened, I was being very angry. But we stayed till about, then he asked me, what do you want to do with your son? He's alone at his house. And I'm worried about your house. So I said, well, I phoned him, I said, go to Movalo, stay on the beach, don't go in the house, because on the beach next to the tourists, he would be safe. Nobody was going to harm him while he was next to the tourists. Don't go in the house, just stay outside. So he stayed, I stayed in the police. Then at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when everything had died down, everything had become quiet, he told me, Soona, I go somewhere where you would be safe. So I said, okay, I'll go to Glassy, where there was the manager, an Englishman, manager of my company called Coraline. We had a tourist company called Coraline, and he was an English manager. I said, if I'm at his house, I know I would be safe, because whatever it is in front of the foreigners, they won't do anything. So I did. That's on the way. I went via Bowalo to Glassy, picked him up at Bowalo, and went to that person's house, where I was given tea and some snacks and food, and I was comfortable till the evening. But Mr. Pillai told me, don't go to your house. I will put the police on guard for tonight, because they might burn your house down. So I will put the police guard, and you have got to be safe. So go and stay at somebody's house. So I went to Mr. Parker's house, who was my business partner at that time. He was a friend also. And the two of us spent the night there. He remembers that he was never taken to his own house after that, because I was too frightened to take him back to my house. But I was not going to stay all the time. So I stayed one night there at Mr. Parker's. And then next day, I went to my house. My maid was left behind in the house, and I asked her, and she said, no, the police came and stayed as guard for that one night at the house. So she did not feel frightened also, so she stayed at home there. So she bore me out. That she said that, yes, the police had come to guard the house. But then came all the, in the radio, how bad I was. I had instigated the children. I had given them alcohol in this. I had given alcohol. I had got them drunk, and that is why the children had gone out on the procession and all that. And every washerwoman in the country came on the radio and said what a bad woman I was. As far as that was what was on the radio that evening. And it came on, it was not just one day. Every evening there would be people who would come and give interview and say what a nasty person I was. So, well, so I became a nasty person. What can you do? So that was, after that, all my friends left. I decided that Darius had to go away. I would not trust him to go to school here or anything. And one of my English friends, who was a doctor here, he said, I know the principal of the school I went to in England. I will phone him and say it's a special case, he should take him. This was midterm, because the schools had already started. This was October, and schools start in September there in England. So he was taken, he got the admission in the school, midterm, and the British High Commissioner gave him a student's visa without any problem. And he stayed all the 4 days at Mr. Parker's house. On the day that he was to leave, I got so many calls. Everybody got, Soona, whatever you do, don't go to the airport. They will arrest you when you go to the airport. You stay at home. So he was taken to the airport, not by me. He never went to school. I did not go to England with him. He was taken by friends, by Jamie Wadia, who took his own son and Mr. Parker's son. So 3 boys, one Jamie Wadia, went to England. And there, because I had no family in England at that time, one of my friends took him to the school, got him admitted, and I did not see school for 2 years. I did not know what was happening to him, or to all my 3 children, because my 2 daughters were there. They were worried. They would cry over the telephone, oh, Mommy, come back, oh, Mommy, come back. But Mommy could not come back.
Tell them why now.
Huh?
Tell them why you couldn't go.
Yes, then I will tell you. It's because after that, we had so many interests. We started selling off our interests. Parker and Oliaji, of which I was a partner, was sold to Mr. Jean Jingwell and became PNG, which is now one of the largest construction company. Coraline, the touring company, was sold to TSS, Travel Services, which was then bought over by the present Creole Holidays. So we sold it to Travel Services, Creole Holidays. The Temuljis was there, so there was nothing, so I could not leave immediately. Something had to be done about Temuljis. So that's that. Then I decided, every second day, I would get some friend telling me, Soona, it's your turn to be arrested. I've seen the list from the police station. You are on the blacklist or whatever they have. So I was all alone, so I asked a friend of mine to keep me company and stay with me at the house, Mr. Praful Mulji, a young man, So he was my guardian. If you see him, he's a rickety young man. But so I stayed in the house. Then Mr. Rene closed down the Regina Mundi convent. And the convent was and the building and the convent was taken over from the sisters. They were supposed to go to different schools to work. But that convent, they used to live in that building. And he promised that okay, you find a home that you can make into a convent for you, and the government would pay for it. Now, the sisters wanted a place to stay. I wanted to move out of this huge house in Montfleury, which was totally, you could not in any way make it secure. So they came and asked if I would sell the property. I said, I'm more than willing to sell the property. We came to an understanding that I would sell the entire property. It was the front small house and the big house at the back for 1 million rupees. So the nuns went and talked to the president that we have found the house. It will cost you 1 million rupees and we will move into this property. That made Albert Rene so annoyed. This is the sisters told me, I'm not telling you a lie or anything. I promised to make. He said, oh, you are so foolish. You nuns are foolish people. Paying 1 million rupees is a house which is full of karya. What do you say, karya? Woodworms. Termites. And he was very annoyed about it. He even wrote in the newspaper about how stupid the nuns were to have opted to buy a house which was not worth the money. But the nuns being nuns, they are women, so they keep to their word. They said, no, we have made a promise to Mrs. Oliaji that we would buy the property. They did not budge. But I said, okay, if you feel that there is this, for treating the house, I'll reduce the price from 1 million to 800,000, and you can treat the house. Till now, the house is standing very well. Nothing has happened. There has been nothing. I don't think any termites have eaten anything of the house as it is. The nuns are still living there. And all my children still crave after that house. If Darius could buy it, he would buy it tomorrow. So then I had to move into my little shack at Boal. And Praful, who was working with a contractor, Praful said, the planning has told me that I will never get permission to do anything to that Boal property. Because for everything you need a planning permission. But I could build so many square meters without having the planning permission. You just get a stamp if just a few square meters were built. So in that few square meters, I had made a room in what was Ambalaka. Michael would explain what is Ambalaka, which is under, the house stands on pillars.
Yes, it was on pillars. So
it was on pillars. So I dug underneath, built the walls, which was not renovation, that was nothing building, just I built the walls between the pillars, made a room, air conditioned it, and made that into my dining room. The showers became the kitchen, where the showers were, which were outside. And the big room was made into 4s and 2 bedrooms with 2 bathrooms. And I built so many square meters of drawing room. And so I was very comfortable in my Bovalo house. It was lovely. And believe me, I felt very safe there because of the proximity of a hotel next door. Because whatever it was, I know that with the hotel next door, nobody was going to raid the house in police vans or whatever it is. I was granted a visa to leave the country and enter UK. Or I said, I don't want a refugee visa, because they were issuing refugee visas at that time. I said, I don't want a refugee visa, I want a visa to live in the country. So the British High, who was very kind, he granted me a visa to go to England on a business visa. And he even granted a visa to my maid, because my maid refused to go and work anywhere else. She said, I'm not going to work anywhere else, I'll work for you. So I said, but I would like to go to England with my children, because my children had no homes in London or in England. They were all in different schools. So only at holiday time, they would all meet together. And then they had to rent some place where they could all be together. So I had to go and settle them, give them a home to live in. When I wanted to leave and I got my visa, they put a bond on me. They said I had not paid adequate estate duty on the death of my husband. Because when my husband died, my brother had come over from India to settle all my affairs. And he had paid the debt duty on the share value of the shares of the company. They said, no, you had bought your partners at such and such a price, so the share value goes up. And you had paid duty on the face value of the shares. So now you got to pay something like 3 million or 4 million rupees. Pardon?
When was that?
That was in 1981.
81 or so.
1981. So I could not leave the country because I could not pay that tax. Luckily, pardon?
If I remember correctly, your husband died in 68.
68.
13 years later.
Any excuse?
Any excuse, I don't know. But who do you argue with in that regime? Tell me. They had Australians, they had who were experts in getting tax out of you. Everybody, there was always a Seychelles who was a director, but an advisor was always a foreigner. And those foreigners came because they did the bidding of the government. They did not come to really do service to the people. So there I did not know. There were no lawyers left. Mr. Frischot had gone away to Australia. Vallabhji had gone away to England. Who was there you could take? Albert Rene had become the president, the one, my ex-lawyer. You did not have anybody to represent you also. But luckily, my auditors were Michael Angus and Company, which was an English company. And Michael Angus had retired by then, but he had put an Australian person in his place, who took up the matter with the tax officers and said, okay, he agreed with the Barclays Bank. The bank would give a bond for my repayment of the money, and every month the Mujis would pay that much towards the tax. Then I had to find somebody to manage Temuji and Company. So I had a very good friend in Mr. Mansoor. He was a deputy manager of Barclays Bank at that time. He was fairly dissatisfied in Barclays because he knew that even though he's a deputy manager, he was never going to become a manager in a English Barclays. So he was dissatisfied. So I offered him, I said, okay, Mansoor, you come and manage the Mujis. And he made a condition. You will get the same salary and all the same benefits that you get from Barclays. Everything. So his was that you will give me the same, what you call the pension after my retirement, that much is the pension. And I would leave the Mujis on the day I would have retired in Barclays, which would give me about 7 or 8 years of time. So Mansoor became the manager of Temujis, and I could leave Seychelles with having been granted the bond by Barclays. Mansoor was excellent. He kept Temujis. He never had problems with the government, anything. He ran Temujis as best as he could under very hard circumstances. And Temujis still survived because of him in that time. When it was time for him to retire, the Rayas who had done business studies and all that in England, he finished his studies. And the Rayas used to come here more regularly, to Seychelles more regularly. I was not coming back. So he used to come. So he was here for the mutiny, for the... Huh? You were there?
Only the mutiny.
Huh?
Only the mutiny.
You came here when the mutiny was on. So, but they had a good time.
No, and I also worked at the Moji, so I learned a little bit then.
Because he came when the mutiny was on and they were stuck in Mowalo House. And the Coral Strand had no staff, so they went and worked in Coral Strand.
It's okay, carry on.
It's okay, there's nothing. But meanwhile, all my properties, because after that, the Mowalo house was left vacant. There was a Parsi gentleman who lived in it. I got a notice that Alphonse Island was taken, nationalized. I was told by the Mansoura, I have never seen the paper about Alphonse Island. Because Mansour just phoned me or told me that it is taken. That my Mowalo property was taken, my Josephine property, which was up in the mountains, that was taken. So I had expected that even Temujis would be taken, but surprisingly it was not. That I don't know why. It was never threatened.
Were you paid any compensation for Alphonse?
Not a penny. Nobody has even offered. Riverside paid. I have not been paid for anything, Michael.
Not even Mowalo, Josephine, nothing?
No, but that I will tell you. I came back, and then there was this 1993 accord, by which they said any property that was not made use of had to be returned to their owners. And I had come back by this time. And I was here when all this was going on, all the negotiation between the two parties and all that. So after that, there was an assembly meeting, or National Assembly, which was totally ruled by SPPF, 100%. But my district representative was Mrs. Porter. She was from Mowalo district. So I approached her and I said, look, I live in Mowalo. My property is in Mowalo. You are my representative. The law says the property should be returned because it is not used. The house was totally demolished. The top floor had gone, nothing. Only thing, it had become a den for drug addicts. So I said, why can you not return it to me? Give the lady her due, even though she was an SPPF and all that. She did bring the matter up in the assembly, and my property was returned to me because it has totally fallen into disuse. But even though the matter was said that the property should be returned, the lands department will not register it back into my name. It took 2 years until I got legal people to go and intervene. I had to pay for legal this. The land was transferred back to my name. I still do not understand, and I will give you another. Right now, to me, the political atmosphere is such that there is more reconciliation from the politicians. But it's the bureaucrats who rule this country, who live in all these departments, and who get their salary from us taxpayers, who still believe in us and them. My property of Josephine was returned to me. I have given the file to you, you saw. It was returned in 2000 and something. Up till now, pieces of land was taken from my own property and were given to different people before the property was returned. They have all built their houses. I have been applying from 2011, or even before that, I don't quite know when, for just change of use, because it is forestry, into of low density housing. There are 300 acres. They will not give me permission to build 8 houses on it. Till today, my last letter is to the environmental department. I had to engage a surveyor. I had to take him with me. I went to this environment minister. Oh, they all sit around the table. They listen to you. Let us see the map. Oh, this is the area. Ah, okay, all right, we'll investigate. We will send our people up. The last letter is written by me in May. He said, in 15 days, Mrs. Oliaji, you will get a reply. Till today, there is no reply. They cannot do anything without you threatening to take them to court. And this is not the politicians. I don't have anything against the politicians. In 1989, now this is the worst possible case. 1989, Minister, which one? Mrs. Sino. She was a minister. Nice lady. I have nothing against Mrs. Sino. She died. Do you know the government took away a part of our cemetery? We have an association, Zoroastrian Association. They took the front part of where our people are being buried, where we had built a little house for our ceremonies. They took away that part because they are going to make it into what is now called a soldat pour Monsieur René. Mr. René's soldiers are to be buried in our cemetery. Mrs. Sino is buried, Mr. Sino is buried, and Mr. Charles, which Mr. Charles, what's his first name? Olivier Charles. 3 graves are there. In our cemetery. Can you beat that? The bishop, the Anglican bishop took up the matter. They preached against it on the pulpit. The Catholic bishop could not accepted. They pleaded against. Everybody was, how could they take our cemetery, our religious ground, to bury their heroes, as they call them? And now the biggest, the commander-in-chief is lying in a public cemetery. He has his 6 foot of, but he has taken thousands of acres from others. How would you feel? And you know what? The Zoroastrian Association, on the day it was taken, we took a petition, gave it to the president. It is an association. So the secretary was Noshe Wadia. Poor Mr. Wadia is dead now. No reply. No, it has got to be taken. You are not going. No, forget the compensation. We never wanted compensation. So then it so happened that we have what we call panchayats, means in India, which is, and they look after the affairs of the community. The gentleman had come to Seychelles and we had all met him. So he came to know all of us. We are only 15, 20 of us. We are not more than that. So we had met, we had entertained him. I went to India and I took our petition that we had made to the president, a copy of it, and I showed it to him that, see what they have done to us. They've taken our cemetery. He said, okay, I'll take up the matter. What he did was, he sent our grievance to Delhi, the central government. Now it so happened that they have a minister for minorities in Delhi. And that minister happened to be a Parsi also. So naturally, he took up the matter immediately. And he sent a letter to the government here. So that has forced them. So they, in return, said, okay, we have taken so many meters of your land. We will give you an equivalent on the side of your cemetery, where you can build your prayer room. This was in front like that. The land that they'd taken was the front part, which is on the main road. But we will give you the one which is now, which opens near the police quarters and all that, the police. The land is surveyed. I will give you this. These are all the some of the correspondence that has gone on. This was taken in 2008. It was taken in 89. Now we are in 2019. That land is not yet been registered in our name. The government built two little, one is our room for our prayers, one is a little house for the guardian. The government built the houses for us on that land. But they have not registered that land in our name. The result is we cannot insure those buildings. We cannot do anything with it. And why can we not? The vice president himself has told the lands department, Mrs. Charlotte, please do the needful and just re-register the names. The matter is with Attorney General. Why? There is no dispute. They gave us the land. They helped us build the buildings on it. This is what I mean, that the bureaucrats sitting in the offices are the ones who do not act. Do you know, one day I have been to this hospital only twice in my life. The first time I went because I had arthritic knee and they said, we have a good surgeon here. My managers, Mrs. Naidu, knew this gentleman. So she phoned him and said, I want to bring Mrs. Oliaji to see you. He said, okay, come to the yellow room for appointment at 1:30. Erica and I went at 1 o'clock. Of course, I had not been to the hospital. I'm a very healthy person, and I no need to go to the hospital. So I did not have a card. So she gave me the details. I fill up the form. The receptionist, you should see, she was a young girl of about 20 or 21, the receptionist. The way she looked at me, as though she was so resentful that I was in the clinic. I could see it in her face. She took my card. She put down the appointment. The doctor had said, come at 1:30. I had gone at 1. We waited till 3:30. And I was never called by the doctor. Then Erica phones the doctor. And the doctor says, but I've seen Mrs. Oliaji. I don't know who that woman sent in place of Mrs. Oliaji. I don't know. We had to go back home. My son is saying, don't get excited. But won't you
No,
be
I'm saying
excited?
this is not what you're here for.
No, this is not what we are here for, but this is what I'm complaining about. This is a complaints department, am I not? So I'm complaining. It's how these civil servants treat you. Just because we pay the tax for them to be paid wages. They think they are entitled to everything, but we are not entitled to even a service of a doctor. The minister is very kind. Make no mistake, they are the most polite, the most gentle people I meet. Everybody is nice, except why can they not put a machine which gives out the ticket, says you are number 1, number 2, number 3. It does not cost you anything, but no, a girl has to be put there. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited, but it does get me very annoyed. Because everywhere you go, it's a blank wall. Okay, I think
Yeah, we have noticed, you know, with a number of complaints, it does take a very, very long time for anything to be
Pardon?
resolved. We have noticed with a number of the complainants that it takes a very, very long time for anything to be resolved, you know.
it's never resolved.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. None of my cases have been resolved. The Josephine, there is nothing has happened. In the case of this cemetery, nothing has happened so far. Even though the vice president himself has instructed them to do.
And so this has been, if I look here, since 1992, you've been trying to get some redress for the compulsory
Yes,
acquisitions.
Of course.
And we're now in 2019.
Yeah. Now, and how many people have gone through that department? God alone knows. Maybe Mr. Lablash might be able to tell you why is it nothing gets transferred. They all say they are overworked, but then if you don't work, the files pile up. The files pile up if you don't deal with them. And then you say, look at the number of files I've got. Because why do you not deal with them? Okay. That is one bit of complaint. Now I will continue my complaints, retemulgis. These are personal complaints. After I came back, Mr. Mansour has resigned. Where is it now? I've got to look at my dates because I'm hopeless at years, riverside dates. Okay. In 1985, SMB was established. Before the SMB, there was an organization called SECOM, which was a government organization to deal with very essential commodities. I don't know what happened, whether it went into liquidation, whether it was closed down, SECOM, and SMB was established under the stewardship of Mr. Vallabhji. They started the system of monopolies, which said only essential items could be imported by SMB and not by individual traders. They had the monopoly because we might be profiteering. The traders would be profiteering. Now, Timurji's had the largest number of agencies. By when I mean an agent is that you are the sole importer and you distribute their goods throughout the island, and they don't supply anybody, provided they're happy with you and the work you do. Now, we were agents for Nestle, and they gave us a credit facility of 120 days. You can pay them after 120 days. They were very friendly with us because they would come regularly here and inspect. And we had to keep a complete record. What is your stock in the godown? What was your sale? How many months' stock you've got in hand? And whether it's worth the credit facility given. Total trust between us and all our suppliers. Total trust. So they started the system of monopoly. The first item they did the monopoly on was milk, of course. The item is called milk. I'm sorry. But there is, at that time, condensed milk was very important to Seychelles. Now nobody uses it. But condensed milk was very important. So condensed milk, powder milk, liquid milk, homogenized milk, infant milk, all come under the one heading of milk.
Infant milk.
Huh?
Not infant milk.
No, the infant milk was not monopolized. That they said, yes, you can import. But the rest of it, we could not import. So they took away, they not only took away the Nestle agency for milk, but it affected our total trade. Now, we were a big wholesalers of Nestle.
Coffee, Nescafe.
Yes, coffee. This Nescafe also comes in because they take away. Then they, of course, had the tea plantation, which they took over. So they did not allow us to import tea. We only could sell seti. So that went. Then they said things like tomato sauce, juice, orange squash. We had the agency of Tomango, a South African company. Imagine, tomato sauce was very important. So they monopolized that also. So we lost the Tomango agency.
But I'm just, what was the purpose of putting these restrictions?
Pardon?
What was the purpose? So they could control the price of milk and the price?
No. They were the only importers. So the whole country could only drink the milk that they brought. They took every essential, 9 headings of essentials, but 9 headings had another 9 subdivisions.
But why what was
Because-
the motivation to?
I will tell you what the motivation is. The motivation was to bring down all the old established traders. What is the motivation of the communist? Yes, so bring them down to the lowest level. And that was Mr. Rene's. Darius remembers, we went to see Mr. Vallabhji, he was the CEO. So we went to see the CEO. And the CEO tells me, every import permit is to be signed by Mr. Rene. Only he could give you permission. But we were not allowed, these permits were not given. For monopoly, there was no permits or anything. You just could not import. Full stop. And they took away. Afterwards, they even went to things like soap and toothpaste and detergents. No? No, they did not. Okay, I might be wrong.
The things like tomato sauce and juice and whatever, is that because they opened the agro industries? Do you remember agro industries? So they had to protect agro industries. So this became protected thing, so nobody could import those items.
So nobody could import. The whole country had to drink one milk, one juice, one kind of juice. They had oil, only that oil could be eaten. No one, and nobody inspected those items which they brought in. If we bring in now a juice, you've got to send it to the Bureau of Standards to check what is the sugar content of the juice. At that time, nothing was done. They imported what they wanted. And we did not know control. Maybe that is why there is so much cancer in this country, because we only cooked food in one oil. You had no choice. You drank the same milk, which nobody inspected. And the children drank the same baby juice that they brought. So, I don't know, this is my guesswork. This is not the truth. This is guesswork. But, so what do? We start importing non-essentials. Like, they allowed us to bring tinned food, tinned vegetables, tinned fruits, and all that. So we got...
Tinned meat? No.
No corned beef. Corned beef was strictly forbidden. No corned beef or anything like that. No meat, no tinned meat. So we got the agency of Tesco. Now, everybody had heard of Tesco in Seychelles. So they would come and buy. But then there was price control. The price control worked cost of the goods, freight, and 30% markup. Other charges, bank charges, clearing charges, your transport charges are not to be calculated. That comes out of your 30% profit. That was the price control, every item. And of course, who worked all those figures out? We did. We had to do a bill of entry where we worked out. This is 30%, this should be the price. Because the price control people, they could not work out all those details. We had to work out the details to cut our own throats. Every second, and this is true, every week, at least twice a week, 4 people would come in my shop and they would check on the price control. It became so annoying that one day I told them, I said, look, I'll put up a table for you and 4 chairs. Why don't you set up your office in my shop? Then you don't have to walk from your office to my shop, since you come so regularly. Naturally, somewhere we had to do something. So this is what my son tells me, I don't remember it. We exceeded some price control. So we were punished. And what was the punishment? No import permits to be granted to us. Flat. So we could not do any business for so many months. This is what he tells me, I don't remember it. Mr. You could not sack a staff. You had no goods to sell, but you could not sack the staff. One of my staff was caught stealing from me the price of a whole refrigerator. He got a different invoice book, wrote out an invoice, collected the money and all that, pocketed the money himself. And when we asked the customer that you have not paid for it, he gave us that, but I paid you, here is this. So we sacked that boy.
No,
I sacked him. What?
I think it's a different case you're thinking of.
No, that was what, you and I, we differ on that. Sorry.
He was prosecuted.
No, he was prosecuted. Mr. Charles, who is now buried in our cemetery, came to me with his delegation of 3 other men and said, Mrs. Oliaji, you cannot sack this till the boy is found guilty in court. I said, I'm sorry. I don't run a CID agency. I'm not going to sit down and try and prove that he's guilty or not. I have sacked him because he's stolen from me. No, you can suspend him on full pay. I said, he was not there. When I talk back to people, he's never there. Otherwise, he does not let me talk back. And so I told him, I said, okay, in that case, you take me to court on breach of whatever labor regulation is, that I have to suspend a thief with full pay till he's found guilty. But he's not going to recompense me for the money that I pay him. I said, you put me in jail. When he goes into jail, I would be released. It's a simple thing. You do it. Of course, he was not going to do it. And I did not. Then the boy was found guilty anyway. So it was so onerous to do business. It almost was, then came the biggest crunch of all, was the foreign exchange control. And there was a pipeline system. You had to put your money into the bank along with your documents for the invoices you have to pay. And when your turn comes, you would be given foreign exchange. The Mulji's turn not once came. We never got a penny of foreign exchange. So in the end, we pulled out all the money that we had put in the pipeline. But luckily for us, the MCB Bank, which at that time was Banque Française, they opened their doors here, and they badly needed customers. So they came to us and said, would you be our customers? Of course, what? Customers means what?
No, you're wrong.
Whatever it is, Mr. Dauphin, the old manager of theirs, was...
pipeline at that time.
Yes, it was. Mr. Dauphin promised me that he would give me foreign exchange to that limit every month. And he kept to his word. And we banked until today, MCB, we bank with them. Though, of course, we now bank with Noah Bank also. But we're still there because Mr. Dauphin was the kind gentleman who said, okay, I'll give you the foreign exchange every month to that degree. You just import to that degree. Under those circumstances, we survived. And you know why? Because Mr. Rene's agenda was that he would destroy all the big established traders. And he has done it. Today, Temujis is not wholesalers. We are pure retailers. Adam Musa has closed down. Danji is broken down. Kim Kun is broken down. Jivan Jetha has become as small as we are. These were the big traders, and he has done it. He has succeeded in doing it. And what happened when SMB took all these monopolies? Who was going to distribute it in all the districts? how districts, who was going to sell in the districts. So they started a system of franchise, by which they would give the franchise, means SMB would supply them goods, which were not just essentials, but whatever else they imported, to the franchisee, those who had the franchise. So, in the district, the little merchants, I'm not going to name, they open little shops in the districts, all over, which is, say, in Takamaka, in Australia, on all those districts far away. They opened their franchise shops. After a time, they could not get the manpower. It's the same shop which is in the town, but they also have a franchise shops all over. So they had to bring in their family members to run those franchise shops. That is why the Seychelles small traders also sold off their businesses to these franchise shops. And now, try and find a Seychelles trader in the country. If you can name any Seychelles trader, small trader, big trader, anybody. The Indians came, they were given residentship because they were the vote bank. And they are still the vote bank. And that is where the Seychelles now say, oh, those nouveau Indians are taking over Seychelles. But who brought the nouveau Indians? They brought
Just-
it so
Ms.
that they could go on getting the votes, and they will still get on getting those Indians' votes.
Mrs. Oliaji, why didn't the Seychelles shop owners or shopkeepers, why didn't they get the franchises? So I'm not
Because
clear.
you had to be selected by SMB to be a franchise.
Some of them did.
Some of-
Okay.
Some of them did. I mean, you know very well. I think you know. I mean, but there are some, but they're not willing to work till midnight. You understand? They want to go home and be with their family like normal people. But they go out of business, or one of these people come and offer them money to sell them the shop. And who's left? Even Harold is finished.
There is, I can't think of one Seychelles trader. We have stopped being wholesalers, so I don't know, now. We don't distribute to them. And then they say there is a cartel. There is no cartel. It is all owned by the same group of people. They are the uncle, there's the cousin, that is my village buy. It is different shops. So one person imports and gives it to all his shops. There's no cartel. They don't sit down and say we would run this price or that price. It is because the whole structure of the business has changed. Okay, all right.
But
So
do you
our-
think that has really made things more expensive in this country?
Well, no, because remember we had a big devaluation in 2008, which was almost 70% devaluation. How much was the devaluation? Definitely more than 50. So when you have a devaluation, what happened is all the top people who had been siphoning off the foreign exchange, and make no mistake, they were siphoning off all the foreign exchange of the country. There was one Mr. Kumar Dey who was in the central bank, in the finance department. He collected everybody's foreign exchange of the top people and used to take it to India. He disappeared with their money, and they could not extradite him. Why could they not? They know where he is. He is sitting in Calcutta. Why would they not extradite him? Because he would open up whose money he had stolen, who is taken away. Ask them. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm saying this is the Radio Bombay, Radio Seychelles, or Radio Bamboo. But this is what it is. We know that it happened. Ask President Michel how much Kumar Dey stole from him. He was the finance minister at that time.
Then there was a passport money he stole, no?
Huh?
When they sold the passports to the Chinese.
And that I don't know.
But that's what he took.
Yes. You had me, I did not listen to the President Michel's this today, but you could have asked him. Ask Mr. Vallabhji. His maid opened his safe, took away his money, and went away to Sri Lanka. She has not been brought back. Why not? And ask Mr. Vallabhji how many companies he has liquidated. And that too, it was all our money, taxpayers' money, not his pocket money. SMB was liquidated. How can a company which has a monopoly of all essentials go into liquidation? Do you know why Temulji's is in such bad books? Because we worked out, our old principals, we asked them, what is your current invoice prices? They gave it to us. And we worked out that all essentials, or not all, mainly essentials were bought through third party, sitting in Switzerland. If rice was bought from Karimjis of Switzerland, why? And that rice was, the invoice is padded by 10 to 15%. The whole country was robbed by 10 to 15% by the people sitting on the top. Don't nudge at me, I will say it. I'm not going to be taken to court, because here I can say what I feel.
Hearsay.
Huh?
Hearsay.
Yes, of course it's hearsay. I worked it. I took it to the Chamber of Commerce. I said, they are imposing price control on us. Why doesn't SMB keep? And no lawyer would take the case. We had the proof. We had the invoices. But no lawyer would take the case. And we took it to the Chamber of Commerce, of course. Chamber of Commerce are full of spies. So they go and say, who was the one who said, made all this noise? It was always Mrs. Oliaji. And yet, the same person brought SMB to liquidation. How can a company like this not be able to pay? He started a prawn farm. What happened to it? He started an orchid farm. What happened to it? With whose money did he start that? And what happened to it? Does anybody reply? They took away all the hotels by a company called Cospro. Now those hotels have been sold. Where is the money of the hotels that were sold to Hilton and to Meridian and to all that? Could anybody give us a reply to the people of Seychelles? You took away the hotels from the legitimate owners. Now the owners are different. They are mainly Arabs. But what did the Arabs pay for those hotels? Then why did we have to call IMF? Why were we in such a strait that the country was going bankrupt? Your mandate is also to investigate, isn't it? I am a complainant, so you investigate.
We certainly will investigate. Yeah, as long as we think it's related to the coup d'etat in some way, and we have interpreted our mandate quite broadly, because we don't see that 1993 brought a fundamental change in this country, because the same government remained in power and the same mindset continued.
It's the same government, the bureaucrats are the same. They only change seats. They take him out from one and put him in the other seat, that's all.
I must say, you have a fascinating story. You were sort of like an unwitting witness to things unfolding, you know? So a very interesting story.
Well, I would like the people of Seychelles to think, why did we go bankrupt in 2008?
Yeah.
We suffered by devaluation because we had our money here, our rupee suffered. But those who had stolen our foreign exchange, they profited by 50%.
I don't know if you've even realized it, but our little country, since 17, whatever it was when we were founded, has never chosen its leader. First was the French king, then it was the British king, then it was Mr. Mankam was foisted on us as the first president. Then the next president took power with the gun, and then he gave it to his vice president, who then gave it to his vice president. We have never chosen our president.
Maybe the wind of change is blowing.
Hopefully.
Yes, this is the first wind of change. At least we are talking. Why did I not talk all this time? Where was the forum for us to talk to? There was no press. There was a time for years, and even now, I don't listen to SBC. I don't read The Nation. So I'm the most ignorant person. I only listen to my friends talking to me. Because I know that whatever Mr. Trump has found a new word, fake news. We are being fed fake news for years. So all you did was, okay, at least I'll become international news. No, I will not know what is happening in my own country. And that's how I've survived. By just not paying attention to what was happening around, minding, working, trying to survive myself.
I mean, given your outspoken nature, it was probably just as well, right, for you?
Yes, I.
Yeah, so she's coming back. Yeah, so thank you so
Thank you,
much. And I think we'll be having you back.
I don't think why we should have me back. I've said all that.
Have you said everything? Yeah? Yeah.
I've talked from 1 o'clock till 3:30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And given you the whole history of modern Seychelles.
Yes. You should be writing the
not?
book. Right? There's a job for you. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We will do some investigation if we need to have you back.
Yes,
It's been a
please
pleasure to have you.
investigate especially about my Josephine, about my cemetery,
And your
Those-
island.
and my
Yeah, and
island.
your
Three
island.
things only
Yeah.
I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. And it's been a pleasure to have you, and such an interesting story. And thank you for your son for clarifying and stopping you at points and
Yes.
then adding a bit.
I'll
But-
tell you what, Alphonse Island, tourists had gone to Alphonse. They never come into Maya. They are flown to Alphonse. They do fly fishing there, then they fly back again. Who got the revenue up till now? Now things are changing. So if you were to call SDC and ask them, they would
Yeah.
give you an account.
Okay, it's a good tip. So thank you so much again, and we will definitely be in touch with
Thank you
you.
very much for giving me a chance
Yeah,
to unburden my
yeah,
thoughts, my heart.
yeah. Very interesting story. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you
Yes.
very much to the whole panel.
yeah.
And you have not interrupted me at all.
Well, you're so interesting. Very fascinating. So thank you. Thank you. So I think our next witness is via Skype, right? Yeah. So,
Poor guy's been waiting how long?
yeah. Oh, not too long. Maybe. Yeah, they're in Canada, so they're relaxing. Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you. Yeah. So we do have to set the Skype up, so I think we'll just break for 5 minutes and then we will set up, we'll be back with the Skype. So we'll adjourn now.
All rise.
you ready? No? It's a long day. Okay, can you please call the hearing number for the record?
This is Commission hearing number 22 of 5th November 2019 in the case of 007 Angelin Labiche, case 015 Antoine Ali, case 032 Sylvia Veronica Morgan, case 033 Derek Morgan, case 038 Kenneth Sherwin, case 100 Soona Oliaji, and case 166 Julien Dauphin.
Thank you. And can you call the witness?
Mrs. Morgan.
Hello, Mrs. Morgan. We now have you on Skype. We're actually going to try and swear you over the Skype before we start taking. So can you just state your full name for the record?
My name is Sylvia Veronica Morgan.
Thank you.
Hi, Miss Morgan. If you may just raise your right hand up and repeat after me. I, Sylvia Veronica Morgan,
Sylvia Veronica Morgan,
swears that the evidence I shall give
swear that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. Sorry we kept you waiting. We are running a little late today, but thank you for being available now. So you are the complainant in this case, and the Commission would like you to set forth your complaint. Take your time in setting forth your complaint, and if you need to adjourn at any time, just let us know, and we're happy to accommodate you. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning, Lady Chair, the members of Commission, and anybody that's listening. It is much pleasure for me today to be able to speak openly of what happened in the disappearance of my husband since the 7th of February, 1977. I'd like to first of all speak a little about the short time that I spent with my husband. He was a contractor, an electrical contractor with WC French, and working with completion of the Reef Hotel in about 71, I believe. And I was also being trained as a receptionist at the Reef Hotel during that time. This is how we met. And from then on, it was just love at first sight. And he asked me to marry him on his birthday in 1972. I was looking forward to a very happy future with him, but unfortunately, that was taken from me very, very shortly. And while just after we were married, he built our first home, and he was very convinced that he could do that as a business because he was very proud and he had achieved his goal of building his own house. So that's when he did his own business, buying property, building and selling homes, which was very prosperous. We lived happily during that time with our 2 young children. Until the 7th of February in 77, when he told me he was going to go to the Reef Hotel for a drink with some friends. And it was quite late that I noticed he hadn't returned home yet. And there was not much I could do. But then morning came and he still wasn't back. And I really realized then that something must have happened. He could have had an accident or something. So I had to go to work that morning. And on my way to work, I noticed his car was parked outside the Reef Hotel. And I thought, surely there must have been an accident that happened. I got off the car and went into the Reef Hotel to try and see if anybody knew why his car was parked there, if anybody had seen him. And apparently not. I myself walked around the grounds of the Reef Hotel in the beach area, and I couldn't see anything. So I proceeded to go to work. When I got to work, I mentioned that to my boss, and I told him that I would want to go to the police and make a report, because it wasn't usual that he would just go away, go out and not come back. So I did, and the police told me they couldn't do any kind of search until 24 or 48 hours. I'm not too sure. I think this is the time period that they have to wait. In any case, I tried to go back to work, and my boss sent me home. He said, "You can't work, just go home and take that day off." And
Excuse me?
my children were only 3 and 5 years old at the time.
She didn't hear.
So with help of my family, I tried to go on with that day. And I've been waiting since then, without any help or any news from anybody. Nobody ever got in touch with me to say whether there's any procedure, any news of him being gone missing.
So, also go.
Mrs. Morgan, this is Marie-Thérèse Purvis, member of the Commission.
Yes.
Did you go back to the police? Did you go back to ask the police after, say, 24 hours or whatever? Did you go back to ask what had happened, whether they had found anything?
No, I didn't. I don't think I did. I'm not too sure. I don't think I did. I was hoping that they would follow this up, but there was a police that was taking care of this
The case.
of the case file. He had met me one day in town, and he had told me that he's collected quite a few statements from the public, and he told me, "Don't lose hope. We will find out." And right after the coup d'etat, Mr. Rene had asked for that case file. And So he never handled that case. From then on, the files were gone. And this policeman has also left Seychelles since. So I myself, I tried to make an appointment before I left Seychelles in '89, because I never heard from anybody. Nobody ever got in touch with me. But I made an effort to meet with Mr. Rene. It was very hard for me, but I did it. And he showed me on his desk 2 little files, very thin, and he said, those are his case files. We have done everything we could. We've even got help from Interpol, and to no avail. We don't know what happened. He told me that I'm still young. I should move on with my life. And that was a terrible pain for me. I knew I was young. I was only 25. This was just telling me that I wouldn't see my husband again. So since there was nothing else, there was nothing I could tell him. I was so afraid. I couldn't say anything to him. I just got up and left. And I tried then, with the help of my family, to try and do best I could for myself and my children. They were young. They kept asking me, where's Daddy, where's Daddy? And I never knew what to tell them.
But did you have any idea where he might have gone? I mean, the reason to go and see Mr. Rene, what sort of explanation were you hoping to get from Mr. Rene?
Well, because I had decided to try and see him and see whether he has an update of that case that happened in '77, and nobody ever got in touch with me. And so I went there to see if there's anything that he could tell me that I would feel that maybe something that imprisoned him or something, and one day I might see him. But that wasn't the fact. Like I said, he told me to move on with my life. And that explained everything to me, that I will not see my husband again.
So why did Mr. Rene have the file? Why did the president have the file? Why wasn't the file with the police being investigated? Did the policeman...
I don't know.
You don't know?
From what I was given to understand, he had asked for that file the next day of the coup d'etat. I think the coup d'etat was on a Sunday, so the Monday, he requested for that file. And the police officer had no choice but to send it to him. And he never saw that file back in his office.
But presumably once he took the file, that was the end of the police investigation? Or do you know, did any police investigation happen after he took the file? No.
Not that I know of, no. No.
And did no one ever told you no one ever said they think they know what happened to your husband, or nobody?
Well, maybe a couple of days after he disappeared, I did try to speak to the receptionist who was on duty that night. The night he disappeared. And she told me she's very afraid, but she's going to tell me this and to promise her not to say anything to anybody. But I wanted to know what happened to my husband. So I said that to the police officer that was investigating that case. She told me that Philippe Dauphin came to the bar and called Gilbert that night. And Gilbert knew Philippe Dauphin as a friend, supposedly. He just got out with him, and there was a waiting car outside. And there was somebody in the car. I'm not accusing anybody, but can I mention his name?
Yes, if you're not making an accusation, yes.
Because it's all that I have is what people have told me. I mean, like there were a lot of rumors going on, so that's all that I know about. She said that he went out with Philippe Dauphin, and apparently Jacques Hodoul was in that car. They got in, and they drove off. She said she was busy, but never noticed Gilbert come back to the bar. And his friends who were with him did say to the police that he left his cigarette on the bar and his drink unfinished. So they were expecting him to come back, but he didn't, and they had to leave. They left, and that was it.
And is that Philippe Dauphin, the taxi driver that was in the coup d'etat?
Exactly him.
Yeah.
He has caused so much pain to so many people in Seychelles, that Philippe Dauphin.
I guess, having you here, the Commission would ask anyone who has any information about what happened to Gilbert Morgan to please come forward. I think it's very important for you, but also for the Seychelles, to know what happened,
I exactly hope that, yes.
Yeah. I mean, if we're honest, we've asked the police for the police file. We haven't received anything. We've asked for the items that they took, the sunglasses, the passport. We haven't had a response from that. We have mentioned your husband's case on a number of occasions because he can't just have disappeared without anybody knowing what happened to him. Somebody knows something. And
That's
now
what I
is the
believe too.
time. Yeah. Now is the time, to do the right thing and come forward. And you have the perfect forum, right? Because there's no punitive penalties being attached here, right? That is what we're offering to get the truth. So I would please ask anybody with any information, and sometimes, I know police say this on Crime Watch shows, but if there might be something, you might not think it's important, but in conjunction with other bits of evidence, it can be very important. So any information you have, I would ask people please to come forward. You might want to say that in Creole, Michael.
But before that, I wanted to ask, the police officer you mentioned who had told you he was doing some investigations, is he still alive? Is he somebody we could talk to?
He doesn't live in Seychelles though, and
Well, that's
and
okay.
he's not in very good health. He's not in very good health himself. I don't know. I think he would.
But if you could give us his contacts through email, we could
Yes.
try and contact him. At
Yes.
least it would be a start.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I will.
Okay.
So you ended up leaving the Seychelles because you didn't feel safe here anymore, if I understand from your...
Actually, after my meeting with Mr. Rene, and they had issued me with a death certificate for my husband, that gave me no more hope. I had been waiting and hoping that, like I said, maybe they imprisoned him somewhere and he probably will come back. But after that, I thought I don't have any hope of ever seeing him again. So that's when I decided it's not safe. I was always living in fear, and with all the rumors that people were saying, all kinds of stories you hear from, what people, and I couldn't go anywhere to anybody to express myself, to say what I've heard until this day, until today. I've kept all this inside me. So I decided it's not safe for me and to bring up my children. It was hard as it is on my own to bring them up. So I thought it's not safe for us. I wanted my children to live in a safe place. And that's why I decided to leave Seychelles and immigrate to Canada.
Mrs. Morgan, did you say they gave you, that after the meeting with Rene, they gave you a death certificate?
Well, I received a death certificate. To be very honest, I don't know how I got that, whether I picked it up in Seychelles or whether they mailed it to me. I don't remember, but I have a death certificate, which I sent a copy to you. And they issued me first with a presumption of death certificate. And then some years later, they issued a death certificate.
So the death certificate was in 1989, a presumption of death.
And I left in October of '89. So this is why I don't understand. I can't remember how I got that death certificate. Whether somebody in my family in Seychelles picked it up from, I have no idea how I got that. I can't remember.
Yeah, it would have been a court process, because your husband, normally it's 7 years. If they've been missing from 7 years, you can apply to get a presumption of death, so then you can dispose of assets and things. That's normally how it works. But, was your husband politically active at all? Was he involved in politics or interested in politics?
I don't remember what year that was, probably about 70, I don't know, about 75. I don't remember. He met, he started talking, he told me he was getting interested with politics. And I said, please don't go there. I said, I don't like that topic. And he was, a few times he had some men come over for a little meeting outside on a vacant property by our house, and they had some kind of discussion. Like I said, I'd never liked that subject, so I didn't ask many questions, but I do remember some of these people. There was himself, Philippe Dauphin. There was Raymond Bonté. There was a guy, they call him Jamaican, I don't know, and Tata Desaubais. These people I remember, and I don't know what they talked about. And a couple times I did see this happen, and so it seems that he was having these political discussions with with people, and there were a few incidents that had happened which I didn't pay much attention of at the time. But after his disappearance, I thought these things now seem to link with his disappearance. Like, for one, Philippe Dauphin was supposed to be a friend of his. Him and his family would come to our house, and we would go to theirs for visits. And I got talking with his wife and the children. They played together. I didn't kind of pay any attention to if there were any political discussions between my husband and him. But so, we met a few times. But on that day he disappeared, I thought, being a friend, you would think he would come and at least pay us a visit, see what happened, how we, getting along and stuff. I never did see him again. And until 88, 89, I worked at the duty-free shop at the airport. And since he was a taxi driver, he would sit on the steps going off the car park to get into the airport, and they would chit-chat, taxi drivers among themselves. And I would go through those steps. He never could look at me in the eye, never. He would either look away, or if he had enough time, he would just get up and walk away. This happened a few occasions, but before that, I had never seen him before. After the 7th of February, I had never seen him again.
So,
on one incident, I bumped into his wife at the market. And she had told me, oh, she's sorry. She heard about Gilbert. And she's very sorry. And she said, oh, we couldn't come and see you because you know what Seychelles people are like. They're spreading a lot of rumors. They say that Philip was involved in his disappearance. And I said, that's okay. I said, I could see she was very uncomfortable. And that was it. I never saw her again either. So this was the one incident that I recall. And there was one night, there was a club at the Paris Sam called, I've never been in that club, but I did hear of it, Club 52. I think a lot of men would go there for drinks and chats and whatever. He had gone there one night and having drinks with some people and talking. Then I believe there was a heated conversation going on. And after a few drinks, I would imagine, and he apparently had some kind of confrontation with Mr. Guy Sinon. And Mr. Sinon had told him to watch what he says, because one of these days he's going to lose his tongue. And my brother was there with him that night. He never told me anything until after Gilbert's disappearance. He said, now I remember, I remember this situation happened. He said, oh, maybe that was something. So like I said, I didn't pay attention to any of these things. And then I tried to I said, maybe there is a link. You know, I'm not accusing anybody, but I thought these were probably political discussions that went on. And there was another time I worked at for a printer, Mr. Serge Poole. It was Modern Printing Services, a story house. And there was one occasion that there was this man that called me, and I just didn't pay anything. He stood outside and called my name. He said, you know, to come, and I didn't pay any, you know, much notice of that. I just kind of ignored it. And then my boss, he told me, he said, why don't you go and see what he has to tell you? Maybe he has something important to tell you. I said, what could he have to tell me? Then I tried to go outside, but he was gone by then. And apparently, from what, again, the only things that I've heard from people, I believe that his father, who was a carpenter at Montfleury, had received a call late one night. I don't know what year that was, but it was late one night, and he was asked to make a coffin and to put weights in the coffin. So he'd asked his son to come and give him a hand, which is this man that called me. And so, again, like I said, this was rumors that I had heard, so probably there was something on his conscience that he wanted to try and tell me, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know, and I just ignored it. I later met this man in Montreal on an occasion, on a bus trip, and he tried to say something to me, but I didn't understand a thing he was saying. He kind of mixed things together, and whatever he said didn't make much sense to me. And I honestly, he just made this conversation up with me, and as if somebody that doesn't really know how to come forward with what he wants to say, he kind of match things together, and that was it. And I didn't see him ever again.
But was this conversation about your husband, or
Well,
what
he
was
never
he trying to
mentioned my
get at?
husband's name, but he mentioned something about Seychelles needs help. Those young people, you know, they need to be straightened, and I'm going to go to Seychelles, and trust me, Mrs. Morgan, we will find out one day what's all this business that's been going on in Seychelles. You know, things like that. And I mean, I don't know what he meant, that he's going to go to Seychelles one day and straighten these people up, and it kind of didn't make much sense to me what he was saying. But at the same time, I thought maybe there is really, but he's a bit disturbed maybe, and doesn't know how to come out with this. I don't know.
And this was the same man who had come to your office that time?
Yes.
At Story House?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did any of your husband's friends that used to discuss politics with him come and see you and say, we're sorry, or none of the other men that you identified, Raymond Bronte, none of them came?
Except for the day after his disappearance, I think that was, Raymond Bonte had a motorbike. He drove by my house, and one of my brothers were there with me. And he called my brother. He said, hey, what's this? I hear Gilbert disappeared. And my brother said, yes, he went out last night and hasn't returned until now. He said, come on, this can't happen. It's such a small place, it's not possible. And then he just left. He kind of, that's all that he said. You know, he came in, said that, and that's all that he, and Raymond also had a taxi at one point in the 70s, because on a couple of occasions, he also, I guess with the arrangement, my husband must have asked him to pick me up in town, because you drop in town to do whatever I need to do. And on my way back, he says, you can take Raymond. He'll drive you home after you finish whatever you need to do, because he needs the car for work. And when I got home, to pay for my fares, he said, oh, no, that's fine. That's a favor for my friend Gilbert. So those were all his friends. And I think a couple of times he dropped me home when he had a taxi. But none of his friends that he associated with came to see me.
And I know you didn't pay any attention to the politics, but was he more on the left wing, more of a socialist than a capitalist, your husband, or?
I really have no idea. But I have a strong feeling that he might have, through all this conversation that he might have had a knowledge or some knowing that there was going to be I'm not sure, I'm just assuming he might have known something, and probably this is why he was gotten rid of. Before he would probably say something, I don't know.
Do you think he was the type of person that would have participated in a coup?
No, I don't think so. No. It didn't seem to me anyway. I don't think so.
Madam Morgan, how are you? I'm Jacques Couy from the Commission. The day of the discipline of your husband, he left in the bar his glass. Am I correct?
Yes.
You have some friends.
Yes.
Are you today in a position to remember some of those friends, if possible?
Do I remember some of those friends?
Well, at the bar that day, yeah.
From what I was given to understand, he had met with a Mr. Maxime Delpech. Clay or Clef, I'm not too sure what his name was, also a Delpech. I think Clay worked with the traffic police department, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not too sure. But he also, I think, then left Seychelles. I don't know whether he's alive still or not. And then there was a Jack Kelly, who was, I don't know if Jack was a British citizen, and Jack Kelly was a friend, well, he was known to us. He bought a house, one of the houses that Gilbert had built at Turtle Bay. This Jack Kelly had bought a house from us. So he was also at the Reef Hotel that night, from what I got to understand. I don't know where Jack Kelly lives though now.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Mrs. Morgan, good afternoon. I'm Marime. Yeah. You said that your brother told you that your husband once have an argument with Gisino in a bar. Did he ever tell you what were they arguing about in that night? No,
because this brother of mine was just as a companion with my husband that night. So he wasn't. I think he was doing his own thing. He liked a little drink, and so he was just enjoying this. But he said he did hear a bit of loud voices, and a little confrontation had happened. And all he remembered was that Gisino had told him to watch what he says because he's going to lose his tongue one of these days. But he never told me this when, at the time. And Gilbert never mentioned that to me either. But after his disappearance, my brother mentioned this to me, said, maybe that might have something linked to, maybe he did have a big mouth and said something, I don't know.
Do you happen to know the name of the receptionist that was on duty at the hotel that night that you spoke to?
I know I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Mm-hmm. And I believe she also, her parents sent her away after that because they feared for her life.
Right.
Because she found out then that I did talk to the police and she was very afraid.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember at all what her name was.
Mm-hmm. Well, if she's watching, it would be good if she would.
If she's watching, I do hope, she can come forward.
Yeah.
I really hope so. Because like I said, at the time we couldn't talk about anything. And I promised I wouldn't say anything. But like I said, I wanted to know what had happened. So I mentioned that to the police in confidence. But I think her parents were very afraid for her and sent her away. So I do hope if she's listening, please come forward and say something we can today.
There is a rumor that I've heard, which is that your husband knew about the coup, and so whether he agreed with it or not, but it was worried that he would talk. And I think you were alluding to that rumor. I have heard that rumor, that's why he disappeared when he did, but we don't have any, concrete proof of that. And I'm hoping out of this, session today that we will get some people coming forward.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we will try and contact, we're looking, anyone that you mention, we will try to get in touch with them. The police officer, it would be great if you could find his, send his contacts, and, he doesn't have to appear, he could give us a statement or something, that would be helpful. To have something. And maybe if we could somehow track down the file with the people that were interviewed, that could be helpful. If I make my plea to the police again to please look for that file.
Because Seychelles being such a small country, I'm sure there's somebody out there that must know what happened. I mean, it's such a small population. A lot of times I sit and I think, how could something like that happen in such a small place and nobody seems to know he's just disappeared on the surface of the earth? It's a very hard thing to believe it happened.
Are there any close members of his family or close friends still living in Seychelles that you might know of your husband?
Of my husband?
Yeah, family, the close family of his or friends of his?
He has a couple cousins maybe. And I think, he might have a couple cousins in the Seychelles. In the short time that we were married, I didn't know too many of his family, but I did meet his cousins, which three cousins that I met with, that live in Seychelles. And like his father, I'd met his father after he disappeared. I never had met his father, my husband's father, before. I met him after Gilbert disappeared through somebody that mentioned his name. I said, that's my father-in-law. And so I went to La Digue and we met. that he's since passed away too.
Mr. Green thinks he might know the name of the receptionist, so we will try and track her down. She's not in the Seychelles, but we might find her somewhere else. The panel doesn't have any more questions for you, unless you have some questions for us or anything else you'd like to add.
I think as far as my memory can take, I think I've mentioned the main points that I wanted to. And like I said, I thank this commission very, very much for giving me this opportunity today to be able to come forward and express this openly. And I do hope the people of Seychelles are listening and that someone will please come forward and enlighten us of this terrible pain we've carried.
Thank
And I
you.
do have confidence in this commission. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. It's our privilege, to hear from people like you, and we will leave no lead uncovered. So you have given us some leads in what you've said, so we will follow up all of those. And I think now we have your son, Derek
Yes.
Morgan, and he happy to speak in the public session?
Derek, you want to speak in public session? Yes.
Good.
He's
Good. Okay.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you very much. Let's hope we come
Thank
up
you.
with some answers. I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll swear him. I know it's hilarious the way we swear, but oh. Hello, Mr. Morgan, Derek Morgan. We're just going to swear you in over the.
Yes.
Okay, so are you coming?
Hi, Mr. Morgan. Yeah, if you can raise your right hand up like this, okay, and repeat after me. I, Derek Morgan,
Derek Morgan,
swear that the evidence I shall give
swear that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. So you were also a complainant in this case. You must have been very
Yes.
young at the time, right? 3 or 4 when your father...
I was 5.
5 when your father... So the Commission would just like to hear from you if you set out your complaint before it, and then if we've got any questions, we will follow up. But we'd just like to give you an opportunity to set out your complaint. Take your time, and if you need to adjourn at any time, we're happy to accommodate you. Thank you.
All right. So I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. And I'll just read like a brief thing that I wrote of my feelings around that time about my dad, all right? So when my dad, Gilbert Morgan, disappeared in Seychelles, I was 5 and my sister Sharon, 3 years of age. We were children and were not quite sure of what was going on around us, although we knew for certain that something was wrong. To go back to my beginning, I was born on the 21st of May, 1971. Mom met Gilbert a few months later and were married in January of 1972. Soon after they met, he took me as his legitimate son, and on their wedding day, there is a photo of him holding me proudly. In the 1970s, for a man to take a woman with a child who was not his own took courage and great self-confidence. It also shows a man of integrity, compassion, and love for others. When Dad was younger, he had a child with a young lady of his own age, and since they could not take care of that child, he entrusted the boy to his elder brother and his wife. They raised him as their own and ended up being the uncle. Dad ended up being the uncle. Every time I look at that photo, I ask myself if he was mending a mistake he had done in his youth. The 5 brief years that we had with him, I have such few memories of him. Being small then, I see visions of thin, long legs in bell-bottom jeans before me. I see those big hands coming down towards me to pick me up. Once I would be in his arms, I remember a fuzzy face as he sported a beard at one point. Every time he wanted to get us a gift, we would each get one. We each had a necklace with a pendant of the first letters of our names. And each had a rattan chair that was plastified in the 70s style. Sharon was red and mine was blue. As I grew up, I heard many different outcomes of what happened the night he vanished. Some of these stories came from my schoolmates and some from adults around me. For someone that is so important in one's lives, to be gone one day without a word of his own is traumatic for anyone, especially a child. There were times where I would think of what I heard and would go in my closet and cry on my own. I knew that Mom would be sad as she did not have answers herself, and I did not want her to see my sadness. So to me, the man who was my dad was a very just man, one who loved life, treated others fairly, and did not judge his fellow men harshly. I had immense love. He had immense love throughout his short time on this earth. He had traveled a fair amount and had even lived abroad, but Seychelles was his homeland. It is impossible that someone disappears from such a small country in 1972 without anyone knowing. I ask whomever was involved with his disappearance or have information about this dreadful event to come forward. As a family, we would like to put our memory to rest, and I would especially like for his other son, Sean Morgan, to put closure to our dad's disappearance. I met Sean some years back in England, and he told me that he tried all he could to find out what happened at the Reef Hotel on that fateful night. He even went to Seychelles a few times to meet with individuals who might enlighten him. His inquiry was inconclusive. I would like to thank everyone working with the Commission for all their hard work and wish that all get answers to their hardships. I also sincerely hope that we can heal and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, yeah, it's hard when you're so young, you know, to keep or to have those memories that stay with you, but you've still got some nice ones, right?
Yes.
Sean Morgan, is he somebody that we could speak to, given the efforts he's already undertaken?
I had communicated with him before, when the commission was just starting, about a year ago, when I sent my grievance. But he was unwilling at that time. He had told me that he had tried many times to find out what happened, and he didn't have much faith in what the outcome of this commission. So, but if you would want to get in touch with him, I'm sure he would be willing to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would like to get in touch with him to find out, you know, what his own investigations uncovered. I think, you know, that would be really helpful. I mean, I can understand it's been so many years with no answers, and if he has, I can understand why he, you know, has a loss of faith, you know, but we would really like to be as thorough as possible. And if he's someone who has been talking to people over the years, he could have, you know, evidence that, depending on what we come up with when you put it together, might make something meaningful. So if you could contact him on our behalf and ask him to reach out to us, we'd be very grateful. Yeah.
So I could forward you his email.
He would be happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, he'd be happy with that? That would be great. And then we could get in touch with him. So it's terrible. So you heard from adults different stories as well as the kids at school as to what happened to your father?
Yes.
And were they just based on, I mean, especially with adults, were they just talking around you, not aware that you were able to understand?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Mom remembers one incident when I was in kindergarten that I came back home in tears because somebody at school had said that my dad was hanging in a tree. And I must have been 5 or 6 then. But so that child was also my age, so would probably have heard that at home with other adults talking, or just made up, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's awful, you know, to have to go through that as a young child, as well as your father not coming home. Sometimes people just lack sensitivity, or they just think children don't understand what they're talking about, when in fact they do, you know. So.
And as children, we tend to live in a fantasy world as well. I mean, we heard that he was in a dungeon, or I don't know if Seychelles possess any dungeon, but these are things that children were talking at school, and and maybe things that we've seen in films or storybooks, and then we imagine these things, but I'm not sure what really happened to him. I just truly wish that somebody would come forward, because as we all know, somebody out there must know what happened to him that night.
Yes, we fully agree with you. Somebody must know what happened. We are hoping, I mean, we're very early in our process in a way, and we think we're just starting to gain trust of people, I hope, you know. As we go on, I do really believe that more people will come forward with information. At the moment, I do feel people are not as forthcoming as they could be. There's a little bit of caution there, but I do believe at the end of this process, we will have a lot of information about what happened in relation to these sorts of cases. I just think people will eventually break the silence that surrounded these events, and then we will get results. We're 100% committed to doing so. So I hope that we manage to keep the trust of the people of the Seychelles so that they are willing to come forward and give us the information that they have. That's our hope.
I strongly hope so as well.
So I hope it's a very delicate and sensitive process. But I mean, I think this commission is offering an amnesty for the truth. You know, for a person who committed a human rights violation, there's no penalty. It's about bringing you back into the society, having you say what you did and acknowledging the pain you caused, sincerely being sorry for it, and then coming back, being part of this new nation building, as the Attorney General calls it, you know. So that's what we're hoping for, but it is a very delicate process, a sensitive, delicate process. But with cases like yours, you know, I really, really want to get the answers, because it's just horrific, I think, not to know what happened after all of these years. So we will do everything we can to follow every lead we can to find out what happened. And that's our undertaking to you and your family. And we reiterate your call to the people of Seychelles to help us with that task so that we can bring you closure.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm not somebody who has a vengeful nature, and I don't think my dad was somebody who was aggressive and would hurt others. So I wouldn't think that he would want us to seek revenge. Instead, to know what happened and have healing and move on.
Yeah, I think you're right, you know. You're very wise for you look very young. I know you're not as young as you look, but you're very wise. You do look very young. Yeah, any further questions?
And just one little thing. When in my reading, I said he disappeared in 72. He actually disappeared in 77.
Yes,
That was my rush of writing this morning, and in a bit of nervous panic, I suppose.
Yeah. But no, we got that. But so we don't have any more questions for you. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for doing this in public session. I think it helps.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, people understand the impact and motivate them to come forward. So it's been a pleasure for us. Thank you for sharing your memories of your father with us. We appreciate that. And I really hope that we can bring closure to your family.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. Have a good day. Yeah, thank you. So that concludes our session for today. There's no hidden witness, Michael, no. So thank you very much. And there is some apologies. We did have to reschedule the Honourable Mitzi Larue, so my apologies to her. I didn't want her waiting outside. We also had 2 people that did not turn up today. Evans Coralie, who I understand we cannot locate. So if anyone knows Evans Coralie, it would be nice if you could tell him we've been trying to locate him. And Robin Albert, who I do believe did communicate with the office some difficulties, but we will look into that. We will adjourn now. We will resume at 9 o'clock tomorrow. With the Carlette Ball case 005.
Moi, je suis content de lancer l'appel pour le cas Madame Morgan et son garçon, pour n'importe qui du monde qui n'a aucune information que je pensais y a utile. Si vous êtes capable, s'il vous plaît, prendre contact avec la commission. Il est nécessaire que du monde qui ne peut pas un autre poste, il gagne closure, il met sa problème derrière lui. Il connaît qu'il est arrivé avec son dimon et puis il est capable de continuer avec son vie. Alors nous sommes vraiment reconnaissants de n'importe qui a l'information, si tu es capable de contacter nous. Demain, mercredi le 6, nous pouvons commencer le premier cas pour Madame Carlette Ball, née Toll. Il peut aller jusqu'à 10h30. Bon, remercie les autres qui m'écoutent et passez une bonne soirée. Merci.
Okay, so we'll adjourn and be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you.
All rise.
Thank you.